If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
A warmer from below. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. Joining me in segment number 2, Curtis Rogers. He does such good work over at 710 Seattle Sports. We're going to be giving you guys a little bit of a West Coast landscape. We saw a lot of East Coast basketball on Tuesday. Got to take a look at what we're all getting out there in the Big Sky, the WAC, the Pac-12, and so much more. We saw an interesting game between St. Mary's and San Francisco on Tuesday as well. So a little bit about the West Coast Conference as well. And then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at unit_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please send these into the timeline. Other way, that is fine, an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire around whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Tuesday. Let's take a look back at it. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
We're going to give credit where credit is due to Stuckey of Action Network for this. UConn over the past 10 seasons, they're 0-21 on the road against ranked opponents, and they've got 2 national titles, and for UConn, they were unable to get the job done. Now, those road games, those do not include like the neutral court games when they played against like Gonzaga earlier in the year, the like battle for Atlantis, anything like that. So that does need to be pointed out, and that would very much skew the numbers a little bit, but that's it. Creighton 85-66 winners over UConn. Now, for Creighton, they were really hot from three-point range, 14-28 from distance. Steve Ashworth had a few shots that went in from the parking lot. Off the bench, you had Fran Farabello along with Jason Green. Both go 2 of 3 from three-point range. Meanwhile, UConn just 3 of 16 from distance. You had Tristan Newton chip in there 27 points, 12 rebounds, and for UConn, they do win the rebound battle 32-30, but for Creighton, they were pretty much saying, you know what, we're going to get you in a shootout, try to beat us, and UConn, they were not able to do so. UConn's still one of your more profitable ATS teams in all of college basketball, and they were riding a very, very nice win streak going into this one, so they certainly still are a team that has been quite trustworthy against the spread, now sitting at 16-11 against the spread, but certainly that was a little bit of a rough loss for them, and this was a very fun game out there in the Big 12. BYU, they were able to get the job done against Baylor by a count of 78-71, and Baylor has been one of your better ATS teams as well. Now 15-8-2 against the spread. This was a spread above 4.5, so BYU, they got steamed up. They were able to cover all numbers, and for Baylor, reason why they lost this game, they went just 5 of 20 from three-point range, and BYU, they went 14 of 36 from the outside. Jackson Robinson off the bench was able to give you 13 points. For BYU, they win the rebound battle as well by a count of 39-30. Other than Jalen Bridges, who was able to give Baylor 8 rebounds per game. Not a ton down low for them. And for Baylor, to their credit, they only turned the ball over 9 times in this one. BYU just a little bit better with 7 turnovers. Those home and road splits in the Big 12, they have been very, very paramount as home teams right now in the Big 12 against the spread. They have been highly, highly profitable. You've got pretty much 5 separate teams that are covering 2/3 of their games at home. Baylor and BYU are both actually 2 of them as well. The lone team that's been really rough against the spread at home, that has been the old Texas Longhorns thus far this season. And for Texas Tech, this team, they've been a little bit rough against the spread at home as well. They are now 7-8 against the spread at home. They get the job done with the outright win, but they're unable to cover against TCU. This by a count of 82-81 being the final. TCU is actually 6-3 against the spread on the road as well, and 16-10 overall against the spread. For TCU, they go just 5-19 from three-point range, and Texas Tech, they themselves went 6-22 from distance, but the reason why you had such a high-scoring game, you had a combined 35 offensive rebounds in this game. TCU, they stubbed their toe in the fact that they lost the turnover battle 12-9, but they did win the rebound battle in this one, 49-36 For Texas Tech, Pops Isaacs was really the guy that bailed them out. 19 points, 6 boards, 4 assists, but rather good showing from a TCU team that, as I just mentioned, they've been relatively solid on the road. And what else has been solid is our DK Network write-up picks. West Virginia has had a rough year all season long, and for Central Florida, they entered into this game 14-10 against the spread. Well, that's now 14-11. West Virginia gets the job done, 77-67. They go 7-14 from three-point range, and for Central Florida, a ghastly 9 of 38 from 3. Darius Johnson goes 5 of 15 from 3 and 10 of 23 from the floor for 29 points. And really, other than what you were able to get out of Marcelius Avery with 14 points, nobody has really helped him out. West Virginia, they win the rebound battle 42-36. Jesse Edwards was able to give you a double-double. Raekwon Battle had 24 points in this one, and Kirk Risa only 1 turnover. So West Virginia able to get the job done. That is what we'd like to see. We are now 22 games above 500 with our DK Network write-ups. You did see one of the worst cover teams in all of college basketball be able to get a cover as well. That would be Missouri. Missouri has been just awful against the spread this season. They are now 7-19 against the spread, and now 6-19. Tennessee, they win, but they don't cover. 72-67 the final. For Tennessee, they go just 5 of 17 from 3, and they were trailing throughout much of this game. For Missouri, they had Sean East give a good performance, 24 points, 6 assists, but did have 5 turnovers as Missouri played pretty much even up with regards to the turnover battle, 15-15. And for Missouri, they didn't get completely plowed on the glass. They lose that battle 39-34 as Dalton Connect, he was connecting. 17 points, 10 boards, goes 3 of 6 from 3, was able to rescue Tennessee in that one. And a team that needs to be rescued against the spread is Wisconsin, as they get a win, but they do not get a cover against Maryland. 74-70, the final is for Wisconsin against the spread. This is now a team that's 11-15-1, and for Maryland, they've been rough with their offense all season long, and a lot of these points did come late, but they go 7-23 at the free throw line. Wisconsin just 4 of 17 from 3. They did have Max Kleesman jump in their 16 points, and for Wisconsin, they get their second straight-up win in the month of February, but has been rough sledding for them. Rough sledding for anyone that had the over in Butler versus Villanova as well. You got 79 points in the first half, 55 in the second, much to the light of myself on the under. You had Villanova get the job done 72-62, and for Villanova, all of a sudden this team is cooking with a little bit of gas. They have given up 62 points or fewer in all 5 of their games thus far this month. For Butler, they go 11-29 from 3, and Posh Alexander went 4 of 4 from 3 to start out the game. He's a career about 26% three-point shooter, and then from there, things cool down. And then for Villanova, what they did a very good job of winning the battle on the glass. 37-20. They completely bludgeoned this Butler team, and for Butler, to their credit, they turned the ball over 7 times in this one, but Villanova got this game slow, got this game grimy, and they get it done. Also another team that got it done, Iowa on the road. We haven't been able to see that very often. Iowa now just 11-16 against the spread, but big win here. 78-71 the final. For Iowa, they only go about 4 of 13 from three-point range, while Michigan State goes 10 of 20 from distance, but Iowa wins the rebound battle 35-34. They win the turnover battle 8-6, and they had on their side Ben Krikke, Crikey, this guy was good. 18 points, 14 rebounds, while Peyton Samford, he was able to deliver 22 points. Willie Call, credit where credit is due for Michigan State, 16 points, 10 boards, 5 assists, but not enough to be able to get it done there. And this team has been ghastly against the spread all season long in Arkansas, but they go on the road and they lay it on Texas A&M. They earn the season sweep in the series. This by a count of 78-71. Arkansas now 8-18 against the spread. And Texas A&M 11-15 against the spread. It's been rough for both of those teams, but for Arkansas, the way that they were able to get it done, they hold Texas A&M to shooting just 6 of 20 from three-point range. Texas A&M went 25 of 39 at the free throw line, while Arkansas went 28 of 34 at the charity stripe. That'll certainly do it for you. As for Texas A&M, you had 10 boards out of Solomon Washington in this one, but for Arkansas, Trayvon Mark, 26 big points, and off the bench, 22 points, 13 rebounds out of Mekhi Mitchell. For them to be able to get the job done there. You also saw UMass just completely pound the tar out of VCU. This by kind of 74-52 being the final, and it has been a UMass team that's been quite profitable all season long. 16-10 against the spread. You had Josh Cohen be able to supply 20 points. Both teams went just 8 of 25 from three-point range, but VCU shoots 30.5% from the floor, sub 30% from two-point range. UMass, they were able to do a really nice job of just sticking them in the mud, not allowing anything easy. Boise, and boy, that was very, very difficult on them. And it's been a difficult season for Fordham as well. Fordham, they are now 10-16 against the spread. They fall to Davidson on the road by a count of 68-53. So, man, oh man, that's been a little bit of a difficult scenario. And then out there in the ACC, it has been a pretty solid year thus far this season for Pittsburgh. They're 15-9-2 against the spread, but Wake Forest took it to them on Tuesday, 91-58, the final for Pittsburgh. They were another team that just could not shoot it on this night. 18 of 62 from the floor, 9 of 33 from 3, while Wake Forest, they shoot north of 60% from the floor, 10 of 20 from 3. Wake Forest wins this game as convincingly as they do while losing the offensive rebound battle by a count of 16-8. You had Wake Forest actually lose the turnover battle 10-9, but Pittsburgh was as cold as an igloo, and Wake Forest was as caliente as it gets. Meanwhile, another team has been quite caliente, that would be St. Mary's, but they do not get the cover on this night against San Francisco. The Downs are able to hold in there 70-66 the final, and if you like me, had the under. 55 points in the first half, 81 points in the second half. We've seen this theme all season long where the halves just reverse themselves. And for San Francisco, they're now 16-11 against the spread. Reason why they were able to stay in there, you were able to get 26 big points out of Marcus Williams. Meanwhile, for San Francisco, they also go 9-22 from three-point range against the St. Mary's team that entered in the night number 2 in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. So they were able to do a solid job of being able to maintain there. If you're looking at some of the total sort of outliers that were popping up on the Tuesday card, Arkansas, with regards to their win and cover, they're now 17-8-1 to the over thus far this season. You've got San Jose State, who's outplayed 17 overs to 9 unders as well. They got just completely lambasted by Boise State, and because they could not score, they did not do their part with this total. 82-50 the final, and for San Jose State, they did not score in the final 2+ minutes as they had a little bit of an opportunity for the over, even though it was at 141.5, but scoring just died for San Jose State, who went actually 10 of 28 from 3-point range. They shot it worse from 2-point range, and they allowed Boise State to go 10 of 25 from 3-point range, with Chibuzo Agboil along with Max Rice both being able to give you about a combined 28 points in this one as well. And if you're looking at a demonstrative under team that we did see on Tuesday as well, how about Duquesne? 7 overs, 17 unders, and a push as far this season on totals, and they completely lay it on St. Louis. 81-66 the final. This was a total of 152.5, goes under, and for St. Louis, they just were down before they could even just get up off the bus. For Duquesne, they get up in this game by a count of 28-8, and at that point, it was curtains for a St. Louis team that went 7-25 from 3-point range. They lose the battle on the glass, 34-29. I have to wonder how long Travis Ford is going to be the coach of this team moving forward, because it's been relatively rough for them, to say the least. And we also have been seeing a lot of unders out of Central Michigan thus far this season. And for Central Michigan, game goes overtime and neither team breaks 62. They're able to take down Bowling Green 62-60 on a day where college basketball went to die out there in the great state of Michigan. 6 of 21 from distance for Central Michigan. 1 of 17 for Bowling Green. Bowling Green actually wins a rebound battle 53-41. They lose the turnover battle 14-8, but nobody could hit a shot to save their lives for Bowling Green. So that's why you get the big under out there, and it's been rough for both of these teams thus far this season, Buffalo and Eastern Michigan, but yay verily as Buffalo is able to get their 4th straight up win of the season. 78-69 the final, as they're able to best Eastern Michigan, as both of these teams against the spread, they have really not been making a whole lot of coin. Eastern Michigan, 11-13 against the spread. Buffalo, 10-15 against the spread. But hey, for Buffalo, they were able to win this game despite going 4 of 19 from 3-point range, because Buffalo wins the turnover battle on Cy Chapman at 23 points, 13 rebounds. You had no Anquan Bolden Jr., by the way, in this game for Buffalo of significance if you are a fan of Anquan Bolden. And then you did see Utah State be able to get the job done against old San Diego State. This by a count of 68-63. Another under for San Diego State, by the way. They have been very hot with that regard recently, but we had Jaden Ledee for San Diego State, maybe the lone guy that showed up for them. He had 23 points, 6 boards. You really didn't have any of the other starters do much of anything. As a matter of fact, the other 4 starters had a combined 12 points in this game. So that was not too tremendous. At Utah State, they're now 13-10-2 against the spread. As for Utah State, Great Osabor, he was pretty great with 17 points, 7 boards, 7 assists, but it was a Darius Brown show with 25 points on 5 of 9 3-point shooting. And for Utah State, they were able to do a solid job of being able to lock things down on the glass. They lose a rebound battle 34-31, but they did a good job preventing San Diego State from having a lot of second chances, and they did a nice job cutting off the three-point arc as San Diego State goes to 3 of 19 from three-point range. And if you're looking trend-wise at what we're getting in college basketball right now, home underdogs have been having a rough go of it over the last 7 days. 41, 58, and 1 against the spread. That said, you've been noticing that the overs have been having a little bit of a rough go of it as well. 169 unders to 158 overs over the last 7 days with 3 pushes along the way. That's a 51.7% hit rate to the under. And overall for the college basketball season, I can't remember home underdogs having this bad of a run. 595, 621, and 20 against the spread. That's a 48.9% hit rate. Meanwhile, overs still at 51.1%. 2,260 overs, 2,161 under. So that's what we're seeing right now in college basketball, and that's what we all got on Tuesday. Now coming up next, we're going to take a look at the West Coast college basketball landscape with our good friend Curtis Rogers of 710 Seattle Sports right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now a part of the Houston Daily Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this man, Curtis Rogers. He does such excellent work over at 710 Seattle Sports, taking a look at the entire landscape that we're getting out there in the Pacific Northwest, whether that be the Seattle Kraken in hockey, the Seattle Seahawks in the NFL, the Washington Huskies across all sports, and even the mid-majors like Eastern Washington, Seattle. He does a great job on so many different fronts. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X, along with Instagram at A Kid From Kent, all together. And Curtis, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Greg, always happy to do this with you. And yeah, it's been just a crazy last couple of weeks out here on the West Coast, surveying the college basketball landscape. Some great teams emerging, some other teams starting to fade back into the pack. You know, we're just a month away from March Madness, so no better time than now to dive in if you're looking for an excuse to get into college basketball this time of year.
Yeah, it is an absolutely tremendous college basketball landscape, and we always typically start off with like the Mountain West, the Pac-12, what have you, but how about if we start out with those two mid-majors I was alluding to? Eastern Washington putting together a very nice season out there in the Big Sky, and though Seattle's not going to be able to win the regular season title out there in the WAC, they've been looking pretty strong themselves. Seattle, I believe, is clocking in number 3rd outside of Tarleton State and Grand Canyon with regards to the WAC. What have you made out of both of these teams? Because I do think that with both of these teams are going to be dangerous in the conference tournament. I do think that for Seattle, just all about what sort of a draw that they get, because they're the one team that really was able to push Grand Canyon in the WAC to this point.
Yeah, Seattle getting that win over Grand Canyon, and then also Seattle getting that nice buzzer beater win over Utah Tech last week. A really feisty bunch of Red Hawks there. Chris Victor, their head coach, really leading that ball club. Cameron Tyson has been their leader from day one. I really like the Red Hawks. If they're going to make some noise in the WAC tournament, obviously Grand Canyon is the target, and they've beaten them once. So can I sit here and say that it's a done deal, signed, sealed, delivered, Grand Canyon is going to represent the WAC in the NCAA tournament? I mean, I feel pretty confident about their chances in the WAC, but as you know, conference tournament time, anything can happen, and that's kind of something that we can talk about with Eastern Washington too, where last year Eastern Washington rolled through the Big Sky tournament, or rolled through the Big Sky conference play, I should say, and then once they got to the tournament, they slipped up, ended up not making the NCAA tournament because they were not Big Sky tournament champions. This year, kind of the same story where they have been rolling up until recently, falling in their most recent game. So Eastern right now trying to shake off that loss. I think they can do it. David Riley is a tremendous head coach. They've got some great performances out of Jake Kyman. Coward is another guy that they've gotten great performances out of. So I think Eastern Washington right now is very much in the driver's seat in the Big Sky Conference. It's up to them, though, if they want to finish off this run and make it to the NCAA tournament, because I think they're probably the most worthy team in the Big Sky Conference right now. In terms of all these mid-majors out here on the West Coast, Eastern Washington, Seattle U making some noise here in the Northwest.
Yeah, with Eastern Washington going into their matchup against Northern Arizona on Thursday, straight up, they are 17-9, 11-2 out there in the Big Sky. Don't sleep on Northern Colorado, though. St. Thomas might actually be the best player within this conference, but just not surrounded by as much as Eastern Washington is able to have. You were mentioning Cedric Coward and all those guys. They have been absolutely tremendous. That's Curtis Rogers. He does an absolutely tremendous job over at 710 Seattle Sports. He is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And then when it comes to a little bit more of, shall we say, the bigger teams out west, I do think that it is going to be really interesting to see what we get moving forward out of both St. Mary's and San Francisco. That was a game for Tuesday that we don't know the exact result of yet, but I really think that St. Mary's has played themselves back into being not just a worthy NCAA tournament team, but looking like a squad that might be able to build off of the fact that they were a pretty solid seed last season. And I know that we've talked about it a lot on this podcast with St. Mary's. It does feel like perhaps that first month of the season wasn't truly who they are, and what they truly are is a team that has become a top 5 team in terms of defensive efficiency and is just at this point mauling teams.
Yeah, peaking at the right time. I was looking at their kind of expanded standings today, and they're 8-0 in true road games this season.
That's
it is
insane.
so hard. Exactly. It's so hard to win on the road in college basketball this season, and they have made it like clockwork for themselves. And you mentioned how tough of a first month they had this season. To see where they are now compared to where they were, yeah, I think they're absolutely a tournament team. Even if they don't win the WCC tournament and Gonzaga or San Francisco somehow get that automatic bid out of the WCC. You mentioned that game head-to-head against San Francisco. I would imagine Gonzaga is going to be rooting very hard for the Dons if they want to have a share of the WCC title in the regular season, because Gonzaga closes out their regular season with a very tough road swing at San Francisco, at St. Mary's to finish off the regular season. But hey, this Gonzaga team, they've been fighting as well. It's going to be a really, really tight race coming down to the wire in the WCC, which is great because at one point this year, it was kind of like, who wants to win this conference? Who wants to be the team that steps forward? And now we're kind of seeing that, St. Mary's for sure, I think, is an NCAA tournament team at this point. Gonzaga with still maybe a little bit of work left to do after their win against Kentucky. I think if they can split San Francisco and St. Mary's, it's not the end of their story. I think they still could very well get into the NCAA tournament, even with the split of those two games. But they're going to need as many wins as possible here to finish off the regular season. I'm loving what we're seeing in terms of top half of the WCC conference. A lot of great games here coming down to the wire. I'm really excited for this 3-horse race between San Francisco, St. Mary's, and Gonzaga to finish off the regular season title here in the WCC.
And we haven't seen a lot of competitive conference races out there in the WCC, and typically it's been exclusively St. Mary's versus Gonzaga. Now being able to get San Francisco to rise up, that has been really nice as well. And what else has been really nice is a conference that we both really love, the Mountain West. On Wednesday, we've got a really good matchup between Colorado State and New Mexico, and I do think that this is another one of those conferences, because you were alluding to how insane it is that St. Mary's entered into Tuesday 8-0 in true road games. This is another conference, though, where I do think the home court advantage is just so big. We saw that the last time Colorado State went on the road and faced off against San Diego State. They were held to 11, count them, 11 points in the second half. And I'm very intrigued by this matchup because we have actually seen New Mexico lose at the pit a few times and actually pick up a few road games along the way.
Yeah, which is strange to say because the pit, when it's rocking, it's one of the great college basketball environments out there. But Colorado State coming off that huge victory over Utah State, I think it was, 75-55, just absolutely rolling over the Aggies. This Mountain West race, you could make the case for about 6 teams right now to win the Mountain West Conference tournament. I look at, Colorado State right now with that win over Utah State. It's obviously one of the more impressive ones that conference has racked up right now. I think I'm leaning towards San Diego State right now in terms of who I think is going to win the Mountain West, just because, A, they were national runners-up a year ago. Brian Dutcher is a fantastic head coach. I think he's one of the most underrated head coaches in all of college basketball. And that in San Diego State, the Viejas Center is just a phenomenal place. It can get rocking too. But I believe San Diego State has had a bit of trouble on the road this season, and 3 of their final 5 games in the regular season all are on the road. So that would be a cause for concern with the Aztecs down the stretch of the season. But I still believe in them. I think Mountain West is very deserving of 5 to 6 bids in the NCAA tournament. Anything more than that, I don't think quite is going to be right. But hey, I think, what is it, like 7 or 8 teams are within about a game and a half of first place in the conference with like 5 or 6 games to go, depending on how many games you got left on your schedule. So, yeah, very tight race in the Mountain West. It's been the best conference on the West Coast this season, bar none. There is no competition right now in terms of top to bottom, talent top to bottom, results. The Mountain West has been the best West Coast conference this season, which I know is tough to hear for a lot of people who follow Pac-12 basketball, especially, WCC basketball as of late, fans of Gonzaga, St. Mary's, what have you. But it's been the Mountain West this season out west.
Yeah, the West has been the best out there. It's been really nice to be able to see all these teams really just show it night in and night out. I think we might be getting 5 bids into the NCAA tournament from the Mountain West, so I'm right there with you. It has been a lot of fun to take a look at all season long. It's Curtis Rogers, who does tremendous work over at 710 Seattle Sports, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, but I know that the school that you went to is actually out there in the Pac-12, and that'd be Arizona. And for Arizona, the questions for me were involving one of our big themes, them on the road, but I feel like they were able to put that a little bit more to rest when they won both the games in the Mountain Road Trip, which is, as we both know, a very, very daunting task. Knocking off Utah in that triple overtime game, and then they completely punked Colorado. How do you view this Arizona team right now? Because they're not getting the same love and respect that we're hearing from the likes of UConn, but I do think that even though they might be a little bit of a tier below the UConn Huskies, I can't really put anyone else too far ahead of them, especially with Purdue slipping up a few days ago.
Yeah, Arizona has been a very hot and cold team this season. When they are playing their best, like you said, they are one of the very best teams in the entire country. You could make a case for them as a national championship contender when they're playing their very best, like we saw against Colorado, winning by 20 on the road, like we saw against ASU, winning by 45 at McHale Center just a few nights ago. But then they lose to Oregon State. They lose to Stanford. Very inexplicable losses. And I think at the time, losing to Washington State, you could have lumped that in with an inexplicable loss. But now that kind of turns into a pretty understandable loss with how good Washington State has been. We're going to learn a lot about this Arizona team coming up on Thursday of this week as they play Washington State. Winner gets first place outright in the Pac-12, controlling their own destiny the rest of the way in conference play. This Arizona team has really met the moment under Tommy Lloyd. They've gotten up for a lot of big games. It's the games where it's hard for them to get up to. A road trip to Corvallis, a road trip to Maples Pavilion where the crowds are just lifeless. And how do you get yourself psyched up for that? But on home court, Arizona is a very different ball club. They have not lost at McHale Center this season. I'm very excited to see what this matchup is going to be like for Arizona against Washington State. Washington State, a tremendous defensive team. Kyle Smith has those boys playing out of their minds right now. Isaac Jones, Miles Rice, I mean, they are just having the time of their lives over there in Pullman. It's going to be a fantastic matchup on Thursday night down in Tucson. I think Arizona, the key for them is going to be guard play, especially Kylan Boswell, who earlier this season, it felt like he kind of had the yips a little bit. His scoring on the road, I think he went like 3 straight road games without a point. He's gotten over that. One guy who has really stepped up his effort is Jaden Bradley coming off the bench. He has not only been, playing great defensively, but he's added a little bit of an offensive touch to his game. So that's somebody I would watch out for as an X factor coming up on Thursday night as Arizona takes on Wazoo for first place in the Pac-12.
Yeah, that is an absolutely massive game for a Washington State team that I know that you've been able to see a little bit up close and in person. And man, that squad has really become that number 2 team out there in the Pac-12. And then the other 3 games that we got for Thursday out there in the Pac-12, I hate to say it, but man, it's rough. Oregon is the best out of those other 6 teams. They're going to be on the road against Samford, who they have some wild home and road splits. Stanford absolutely lights it up from 3 at home. On the road, they can't do anything whatsoever. The Oregon State versus Cal game is rough. And then Washington versus Arizona State, I do think is intriguing because for Mike Hopkins, it feels like he's really coaching for his job at this point. And for Arizona State, we always make the joke that they're home away from home is Dayton. Well, they're not going to be going to that home away from home because they've already lost 13 games.
Yeah, that one's kind of like a losers leave town match for all you wrestling fans out there. I feel like Mike Hopkins right now had plenty of opportunities this season to build and to show that he was worthy of coming back for at least the final year of his contract. He beats Gonzaga earlier this season when Gonzaga was ranked in the top 10. That kind of opened people's eyes like, oh, maybe this is a different story for this Washington team. And no, it's not. It's the exact same as it's been for the last 4 to 5 years for Hopkins. He got out to such a tremendous start as Washington's head coach with the back-to-back Pac-12 Coach of the Year awards headed his way. He went to the NCAA tournament, but once he was playing with his own guys and not Lorenzo Romar's guys, he kind of saw where the warts were. And Hopkins just has not really been somebody that has adapted well to basketball, I think, in 2024. You hardly ever see zone getting played anymore. When you know that Washington is going to play zone all 40 minutes of the game, you can do pretty much whatever it is you want against that defense because you know they're not going to veer from it. And I just kind of feel like Washington right now is stuck in the mud. I know that their athletic department is willing to spend because they just shelled out a bunch of money to hire Jed Fish as their head football coach. I think they're paying him about $7 million. I know that they've paid a couple of buyouts for guys over the last few years. Jimmy Lake comes to mind in terms of buyout. So the athletic department's got money to spend. Mike Hopkins, you can't really coach with 1 year remaining on your deal because you need to have the assurance that you're going to coach beyond that season for guys who you're trying to recruit. I know they have Zoom Diallo committed, a 5-star kid who is from the Seattle area. But as we saw with Lorenzo Romar, he had the Porter brothers committed, and that didn't mean anything. He got his walking papers after such a dismal end to his coaching career at Washington. So, yeah, you have a 5-star kid committed, but I think for the overall health of the program, a decision needs to be made on Mike Hopkins. And look, they hired a new athletic director a few months ago, Troy Dannon, who has no ties to Mike Hopkins. I'm sure he's got his own list of candidates that he would like to interview. So that's a situation definitely worth watching over the next, I would say, probably, month now. Pac-12 tournament time, I can't see Washington winning that. So around Pac-12 tournament time, once the Huskies get eliminated, there could be some news on that front.
Yeah, it's been just rough for Washington. I must say, Zoom Diallo, that's like one of the best names I've ever heard for a basketball player. That just sounds like a guy that's going to go out there and is absolutely going to hoop it up. Why even lace him up? Because Zoom Diallo just wins every single time as Curtis Rogers does such tremendous work over at 710 Seattle Sports. He's joining me right here on Cusco Soups. And Curtis, I always want to ask you this question because you do such a good job taking a look at college basketball. We've looked at the West Coast landscape. Is there a team or two that is standing out for you? And it can be from the West Coast landscape. It can be from the East Coast. You could go out to the heartland of America that you've got your eye on right now, whether that be to the positive or the negative.
Well, one team that I think has kind of righted their ship after such a brutal start to the season, Michigan State's looking a little bit more competitive, looking a little more competent. I think they're a team that, they had such high expectations this year that they're starting to finally kind of live up to them. I would expect them to make a little bit of noise in the tournament if they get there. And then a team that is going the wrong direction. I mean, Wisconsin, they're just in absolute free fall right now. And also, how about Rick Pitino just throwing his entire team under the bus over at St. John's? I get that he, took that job under less than ideal scenario, so late into the offseason. But, buddy, that's the team you put together. You cannot be the one trashing them the way you did this week. But that's Rick Pitino for you. That's just who he is. That's who he'll always be. So, yeah, I'm looking at those two teams right now as teams that I'm up and down on across the landscape of college basketball. Those two, Tom Izzo and Rick Pitino, those two guys, this time of year, always making headlines. And Rick, maybe not for the best reasons, but that's what you get when he's your head coach.
Yeah, Rick Pitino absolutely throwing guys under the bus. That was intriguing to say the least. This is like when if you ever played Madden back in the day and you created your own franchise and you change like the hamburger and the hot dog prices. I feel like he's jacking those up to high noon right now. The morale seems to be a little bit low with them, but the morale is always high. When we got Curtis Rogers of 710 Seattle Sports Report, he does such good work taking a look at this great game of college basketball. And Curtis, let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
Twitter and Instagram at A Kid from Kent, and then also SeattleSports.com. We have got a lot coming up this week, especially with Washington State playing Arizona for first place in the Pac-12. We're the Washington State Cougars affiliate station, so there's going to be a lot of conversation. We've got Matt Chazanow, play-by-play voice of the Cougs, coming up this week, so we'll talk to him about how fascinating, how fun, how amazing this run has been for Cougs fans. So that conversation will be available on our podcast page. Click on demand. It'll be there for you. And that's what we got going on, Greg. College basketball, it has overtaken our lives all throughout the year, but especially this time of year. Always a pleasure hopping on this podcast and talking it with you.
It is always great to have you aboard, Curtis, and that is going to be tremendous. More buzz in Pullman than we've seen in a long time for college basketball. That game on Thursday is going to be tremendous, and the folks over at 710 Seattle Sports, along Curtis, going to have you covered there. And Curtis, he does a great job taking a look at the entire landscape of this great sport. So big thanks to him for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Wednesday as we hit some big games. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by Curtis Rogers. He does such good work over at 710 Seattle Sports, taking a look at this great game of college basketball and really anything out there in the Pacific Northwest that you want insight on. He's able to do a tremendous job on that front over at 710 Seattle Sports. I know that baseball season will be here before we know it, and I know that he does pre- and post-game work with the Seattle Mariners as well. So always great to be able to get Curtis aboard. Big thanks to him for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNet_D1, and we're going to be going in the Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games with 3 digits on the rotation first, then the games with 6 digits. Those are involving the Patriot League, the Big South. If you have any MEAC/SWAC games, those would be down there as well. I think there might be an Atlantic Sun game. And then if you would have anything from the Southland, those are the games that get listed at the bottom. So let's get things started with 655, 656 on the betting board. Western Carolina, it's Rhode that facing off against UNC Greensboro. And Greensboro is a favorite of 5 points. On this game is 138. I did set my line at 4.5. Here at the 5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Western Carolina. You've got 2 top flight players in this game, by the way. I do think that the best one, though, is on the side of Western Carolina. That'd be Vatarius Woolbright, who has been absolutely tremendous. 22.5 points, 12.2 boards, 5.3 assists per game. He's in the top 5 nationally in terms of both points and rebounds per game, while being a 6'6" combo player that, he doesn't shoot it well from 3 at 26.3%, but he's able to give you that versatility. He chips in there, just whatever is needed for this team, and around him, you've got a bunch of guys that are really able to pop it from 3-point range as well. You've got Trey Jackson, along with DJ Campbell, combining for about 25.5 points per contest. Campbell shoots 43.5% from 3. Russell Jones shoots 41.5% from the outside as well. And though Western Carolina, they really don't force any turnovers. In terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, this is a bottom 75 team in all of college basketball. They still, despite that, are a pretty solid defense. Western Carolina, about 113th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, only allowing 1.2 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. And for UNC Greensboro, they're actually giving up more points per possession at home rather than in a roadside-shoot-score venue. Now, you've got Mikael Brown-Jones. He's been amazing, 19.5 points. He gives you 6+ boards and has been shooting well north of 46% from 3-point range. But for UNC Greensboro, this has not been quite the same defense that we've seen in the past years. Mike Jones, you might ask who, and I say Mike Jones, typically has this team firing all cylinders on defense, but at home they are allowing opponents to shoot about 35% from 3-point range. It's a Greensboro bunch, and other than Brown-Jones, you don't necessarily have a ton come down low, and both of these teams do leave a little bit of something to be desired when it comes to being able to hit the glass and not having like that true post presence. But Western Carolina is sort of a by-committee team. Thanks to Woolbright, they are about a top 65 team with regards to rebound rate. Meanwhile, for UNC Greensboro, they're a bunch that they're clocking in more in that neighborhood of about 205th. You do, though, have the Langley brothers on the flip side for UNC Greensboro. They've both been great in the backcourt. Kobe Langley, he does a little bit more of the little things, 8.5 points, 6 assists, 2.3 steals per contest, while shooting about 37% from 3. And Keyshawn Langley, more of your scorer, shooting 40% from 3, 14.5 points per game. And for this Greensboro bunch, each of your top 3 scorers do shoot at least 78% at the free throw line. And I think that Greensboro just has a little bit more in terms of depth itself to be able to get it done. And this has been a Greensboro team that has been bearing down with their defense, giving up less than 110 total points in their last 2 games. But I do think that this is going to be a rather nip and tuck game between two teams that have 2 very good feature players. So did set my line at 4.5. I'm going to be willing to take the 5 with Western Carolina. Western Carolina, outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game, and they themselves have given up 65 points or fewer. So did set my total of 136.5. I'm diving under, and I'm looking at the points with Western Carolina. 657, 658 on the betting board. LaSalle plays us the St. Bonaventure. Bonaventure is a 6.5 to a 7-point favorite. Your total on this game, it is 145. I did set my total 141. I'm going to be looking at the under. St. Bonaventure, a bottom 75 team in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game. And for St. Bonaventure, it has been a little bit touch and go in terms of the defense here in conference play, but they have still maintained being a top 100 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And that defense travels. They're only giving up 1 more point per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. And if you just specify Rhode and Rhode only points allowed on a per possession basis, this is a top 75 team in all of college basketball going up against a defense in LaSalle that is not in the top 75 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. For LaSalle, this team is 279th, but for LaSalle, I do like what you're able to get out of the backcourt. You've got someone in Anwar Gill who's got good versatility. He'll give you like 10 points, 3 or 4 rebounds, a few assists. He just does a little bit of this and that, but they are going to have their hands full going against a St. Bonaventure team that overall they're shooting well north of 35.5% from 3-point range, and their top 3 players have made at least 1 3. Moses Flowers, Mike Adams Woods, Charles Pride. Between this trio, you've been able to get about 36 points per contest, but all 3 of these guys, they shoot north of 38.5% from 3-point range apiece. This team only turns the ball over about 11 times per contest, and you've been able to have the St. Bonaventure team get quite a bit down low out of Chad Venning, who's been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game. Jan Farrell, I can't pronounce his new name. I have no idea why. There was a name change that went on in the offseason. He's still giving you 5.5 rebounds per game, even though he has had a little bit of a fall off from what he was doing a season ago. But St. Bonaventure, a top 100 team on glass, going up against the LaSalle team as well outside the top 250 with regards to their rebound rate. For LaSalle, you've been able to get about 5.5 to 6 rebounds per game out of Rokas Josias. But this is going to be a bunch in LaSalle that if they're going to hold in there, they're going to need their backcourt to execute. Khalil Brantley, Jamari Breakus, they combine for about 29.6 points, 9 assists, and 3 steals per contest, while Breakus has been able to shoot 41% from 3-point range. But out of the team's top 5 scorers, he is the only one that does shoot above 30% from 3-point range. This is a LaSalle team that has had a tough time guarding the arc themselves. For LaSalle, they are allowing opponents to shoot 38% from 3-point range at home. And for St. Bonaventure, while sometimes they can give up a little bit from distance, they've actually been significantly better when they've been away from home, allowing opponents to shoot 29.6% from the outside, which is why I do think that you're going to have a little bit of a lockdown defensive performance. I did set my total at a 141. I do think that St. Bonaventure has their defense travel, so I'm looking at the under. And here at 6.5, I'm willing to lay it with St. Bonaventure, set them as a 7-point favorite. Wouldn't want to go any further than this, but going to be willing to lay the 6.5 with the Bonnies and looking at the under. 659, 660 on the betting board. Penn State is going to be playing us Illinois. Fighting Illini are a 7.5-point favorite. Your total on scheme between 157 and 157.5. Very interesting spot here, considering that Kanye Cleary, the top scorer for Penn State, he is no longer with the program. You do have to wonder if this leads to a little bit of a better effort defensively for Penn State, though, because under this system that is run by Mike Rhodes, it's all about generating turnovers and not allowing teams to be able to pop it from 3. Penn State has been a really good perimeter defense this year. They are 36th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and now they are going up against an Illinois team that, even though if if you look at the overall numbers for Illinois, they're a top 85 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're 73rd in the country if they guard opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They're not the same team defensively when they're on the road. They're giving up well north of 16 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home, and while they allow opponents to shoot just 28.6% from three-point range at home, that balloons up to 37.3% in a road/score venue. Now, where Penn State is going to get absolutely cooked, this would happen with or without Cleary. That's the fact that this team, down low, they have just not been tremendous. Penn State outside the top 300 with regards to rebound rate. Meanwhile, you've got a top 25 team in Illinois who's really been able to find it with Coleman Hawkins giving you about 12 points. Jordan's in there about 6 boards. He's shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. The versatility of Marcus Domask has really been coming to the forefront as well. He's able to pull in there north of 5 rebounds. He's going to give you 15.5 points per contest. Terrence Shannon has been your main scorer with about 21.5 points per contest. And for Illinois, they do this all while turning the ball over only about 11 times per contest. They're a team, though, that they're about the opposite of Penn State. Penn State, they are a top 20 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Illinois, they're generating about 4.5 steals per contest, one of the lowest marks in all of college basketball. And now it's going to be up to the two gentlemen that followed Mike Rhodes over from VCU and Ace Baldwin and Nick Kern to hold it down in the backcourt without Cleary. Baldwin has been one of your main defenders, 2.8 steals, 5.5 assists, 14 points per contest, while shooting about 34% from three. Kern has been a little bit more of a number 3 guy with about 8 points per contest, and other than Kuda Swab, you don't have anyone on the roster that's able to give you north of 4 rebounds per game, but I do think that an X factor to watch is Jameel Brown, someone who's been a little bit touch and go. We did see him in the team's last game be able to put in there some points. He has been shooting about 36% from three-point range for a Penn State team that they've only been shooting about 32% from distance all season long. The loss of Cleary, I do think is going to be hurting Penn State offensively, but I really don't think that it affects their defense very much. It is a Penn State team that they do leave themselves very vulnerable down low, but I do think that with Cleary out of the fold, they might be able to bear down a little bit more defensively. Wouldn't be surprised if they slow things down just a little bit. As for this Penn State team, they are allowing about 14.7 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/score venue as well. So I did set my number at 5. I think that Illinois pulls it off, but I think we went a little bit too far with the 7.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Penn State, and I do think that the sort of fallen man theory takes hold for one game for Penn State, so I'm going to be willing to take the points, set by total 155 as well. So also diving in on the under. 661, 662 on the betting board. Georgia State is going to be playing us to Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina is an underdog of 10 points. Your total on this game between 153 and 154, and with Coastal Carolina, I did set them as an underdog of 10.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay 10 and not a half a point more with Georgia State. Georgia State has been very good at being able to guard the arc all season long. A top 40 team in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, going up against a Coastal Carolina team that I just really don't know what this team does well. You've been able to get about 12.5 points and 10.5 rebounds out of George Mason transfer. Janika Ojiako, he's been pretty solid down low. And then Jacob Meyer, he's able to give you about 14 points, 2.5 assists, shoots 42.5% from three-point range, but Coastal Carolina is well outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, as they shoot about 32.5% from three, 64.2% at the free throw line, all while turning the ball over north of 13 times per contest. And this Coastal Carolina team has a bit of an issue on defense. They're well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They don't do the world's worst job of being able to guard the three-point line, about 192nd in all of college basketball with this regard, but this is not a Georgia State team that's really looking to go bombs away from three-point range. You've got a very versatile point guard in DeJuan Odom that stuffs the stat sheet. He's been able to give the team about 12 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, shoots 40% from three-point range for a Georgia State team that's in the top 25 nationally in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and they've got someone that is able to match up with Ojiako down low and Jaden Turner down for what? Mr. Turner, he's been able to give you a little bit over a steal, 9.5 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, Lucas Taylor has been able to be very solid in the backcourt, giving you about 14 points, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range. For a Georgia State team that you'd like to see them be a little bit better on the glass. They're about 228th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, but despite the fact that Ojiako is in the fold, Coastal Carolina is only about 182nd, so it's not like they're a whole heck of a lot better with that regard. With Coastal Carolina not being able to find a whole lot of open looks in this game from three, with the way that Georgia State really does a nice job of being able to lock it down, and this Georgia State team in general, having come in, given up 70 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games, I do think that Georgia State going to do a solid job against the Coastal Carolina unit that they have given up 75 plus in 4 of their last 5 games. I will say this for Coastal Carolina, they've gotten to at least 74 in each of their last 4 games. Coastal Carolina, certainly a top 125 team in terms of total possessions per game. Georgia State has been playing a little bit more up-tempo as well, but I think the way that Georgia State locks it down from three-point range, and with the way that Coastal Carolina, just in general, a little bit sloppy with the ball, that will be able to keep this total under. I said my total 150.5, so diving under. And with Georgia State, made them a 10.5 point favorite. I'm willing to lay up to 10 with them. 663, 664 on the betting board. VMI is the road face-off against East Tennessee State. ETSU is a 17-point favorite. Your total on this game between 147.5 and 148. I said East Tennessee State as a 16.5 point favorite. Willing to take the 17 with VMI. Now, VMI, well outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. It has been a horrible, no good, bad year for them, and it seems like it's just been getting worse with every single passing week as the team is not even getting going on offense. 63 points or fewer in each of their last 3 games, but last time these two teams hooked up, granted it was on VMI's home floor, that was a 74-73 game, and I don't think that it's going to be another 1-point game, but I do think that VMI has the chops to be able to hold in there. Now, I don't think that they're going to shoot 9 of 17 from 3-point range the way they did the first time around and win the turnover battle 20-15, but this VMI team does have Brendan Watkins in the backcourt, who I like. 15 points, 3 assists. He does shoot 37% from 3. It's for a VMI team that is in the bottom 10 nationally with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. They do go up against an ETSU team that is a little bit more stout down low. They're not necessarily a team that is going to go out there and generate a bunch of steals, so you do have one guy with a tremendous last name in Kamari Peterson who's been able to give you darn near 2 steals, 3.5 assists, 13.5 points per game, but also for this ETSU team, just take a look at the outside shooting for this team, and it is ghastly. Their top 9 scorers on the roster, you've got one guy that shoots above 30.1% from 3-point range, and that would be Ibi Asamoah, who's been able to give you 15 points, shoots 34% from 3-point range. They go up against a VMI team as well outside the top 275 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and despite the fact that you've got Tashad Jackson down low for VMI, who's been able to give you 10 plus rebounds per game. VMI, they're 297th in the country with regards to their rebound rate. ETSU, meanwhile, they're more around about 150th, but with not really having that guy from the outside that's able to put you away, I do think that that's going to be rough for an ETSU team that they do make do with 5 separate guys that give you at least 4.2 rebounds per game, and they're all your top 5 scorers, by the way, which makes it all the more impressive, but ETSU does have a few turnover issues of their own. I do think that for VMI, you're going to be able to get just enough with about 13 points out of Tyrone Cook, who's been able to shoot 35% from 3-point range to be able to hold in this game against an ETSU team that they've been okay with regards to their 3-point shooting defense. They do allow opponents to shoot just 31.8% from 3-point range at home, but they also go up against a VMI team that they really don't have demonstrative home and road splits, and they actually hold opponents shooting 34.2% from distance away from home compared to more like 38% at home. So I do think that this number has went a little bit too far. I set my line at 16.5. I'm going to be willing to take the 17 with VMI, and I did set my total at a 148.5. VMI has just been bleeding points all season long, and for ETSU, this bunch has been a little bit lackadaisical with regards to their defense as they've given up 70 plus in each of their last 2 games going up against the VMI team that, well, they've given up at least 75 in each of their last 5 games. So going to be looking at the over in this spot, and we'll take north of 17 here with VMI. 665, 666 on the betting board. The Citadel, it's a road face-off against Mercer. Mercer is a favorite of 4.5 points. Your total on this game is 133.5. I did set Mercer as a favorite of 7 points. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. The Citadel has been able to do a solid job on the glass. They're a top 125 team with their rebound rate. Quinn Melora Brown, the transfer from Vanderbilt, is able to give you about 9 points, 8 plus rebounds per game. So you do like to see that. And for the Citadel, this defense of theirs has been able to travel. They're only about 219th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but they're only giving up about 2.9 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, so they do a pretty solid job on the road. Meanwhile, this Mercer bunch are about 193rd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're very much reliant upon Jalen McCreary to be able to do things down low. About 15 points, 5 boards per contest, and then Alex Holt has done a nice job helping him out down low as well. He's also able to give you about 5 rebounds per game. Mercer has a little bit of a disadvantage down low, but this is a Citadel unit that sometimes they can be at a little bit from the outside, especially when they do leave home. They're allowing opponents to shoot north of 34% from 3-point range, 218th in the country with that regard. And for Mercer, they just feel like they're okay at darn near everything. They're just outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. They're 244th in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, though that does fall to about 32.5% when they're at home. They're okay, but they're not great at really retaining the ball. They're just able to check every box, but not really able to do so with flashing colors, if that makes sense. And then on the flip side for the Citadel, you've got two main scorers, Elijah Morgan along with AJ Smith. These two guys have been able to combine for 31 points per contest. Morgan is able to shoot 41% from three with 1.3 steals per contest. Meanwhile, Smith, he shoots 35% from the outside end. Yeah, been able to get in that neighborhood about 11 points, 5.5 boards, and 3 assists per game out of Madison to help out as well, but it's a very top-heavy team. Meanwhile, for Mercer, you've been able to have a duo of Robbie Carmody coupled with the 6'6" combo player Jake Davis really be able to launch from three-point range. These two guys, they're combining for about 16.5 points at 37% three-point shooting. Now for Mercer, if you do have trepidation with this team, it is probably because they shoot just 65% of the free throw line. That is a little bit less than terrific, but this has been a Citadel unit that has been a little bit of a letdown on defense recently. Haven't given up at least 70 points in 3 of their last 4 games and haven't scored 64 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. The lone exception came against VMI. And for Mercer, they've been able to launch their offense. 78 plus points in 3 out of their last 5 games. Defense has been able to hold up as well, giving up fewer than 70 points in all but 1 of their last 5 games, with that lone exception being against Samford. Do like the recent form of Mercer. I feel like they're finding a little bit more in the backcourt. Mercer does a better job of being able to generate turnovers as well, which did put me on Mercer in this spot. I did set them as a 7-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. The Citadel, they're well outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game. So is Mercer, but I do think that this is going to be a game that allows for a little bit of late game fouling, and we have seen the Citadel be a little bit more shaky on defense recently, allowing a few more second chances. So did set my total 135. Looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Mercer. 667, 668 on the betting board. James Madison hits the road face off against Marshall, and Marshall does find themselves as a home underdog of 7.5 to 8 points total on this game, between 154.5 and 155. Did set James Madison as a 10-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. James Madison is just really bearing down with their defense. They're now a top 25 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against a Marshall unit that just has not been able to find their footing on offense. Typically for Marshall, they're able to utilize their defense to really ignite their offense. Typically, they're like a top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and then they're able to get out and they're able to run. That has not been the case this year. They've only been able to generate right around about 7 steals per contest, so that means that Obiana Onchide-Killian, who's been a little bit in and out of the fold due to injury, he's had to be the main form of offense. 15.5 points, 6.5 boards. He does give you a block, a steal, and 36% three-point shooting at right around 6'7", 6'8", so he's got very good versatility. But for this Marshall unit, currently in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they are well outside the top 200 with that regard, so they have not really been able to get it going. Meanwhile, you've got a James Madison unit that they're now a relatively average team with regards to their three-point shooting, but they're 32nd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis because they've been able to get really good production of TJ Bickerstaff. He hits the boards, giving you about 8.5 boards, a steal, 14 points per game, and then you do have a pair of guys in Julian Wood and Noah Friedel. Combined, shoot about 37.5% from 3 with about 22 points between these two guys. You've got a pair of guys that give you north of 3 assists per contest, and Terrence Edwards, who's also your main scorer with north of 17 points per game, and Michael Green, who's a little bit more of a designated passer, 3.5 assists to 1.3 turnovers per game. James Madison's big key has been really being efficient as well, as they only turn the ball over about 10.8 times per contest. Despite being a top 35 team with regards to possessions per game, James Madison has gotten to at least 77 points in 4 of their last 5 games, 73 plus in every single one of them, and the defense has really been able to hold up. Meanwhile, you've got a Marshall unit that all of a sudden they have failed to get past 70 points in each of their last 3 games, but they certainly have been giving it up at least 73 points in each of their last 5 games. So very interesting scenario here, especially with the Marshall team that they are really looking to get out there. They're looking to run it. So this is a total that I did set relatively high. I did set this at a 156. So in this circumstance at a 154.5, looking at the over, and with James Madison, one to lay up to 9.5 with them, made them a 10-point favorite. 669, 670 on the board. It is Dayton. They hit the road. They're facing off against George Mason. Old George very boldly going 1-on-5 in this one. Get some points for his cause. George Mason, a 2-point home underdog, seeing 2.5 out there as well. Total on this game is 134, and with George Mason, did set them as a 4.5-point underdog. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Dayton. Dayton has just been a machine on offense all season long, a top 30 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, and it's not like they take a massive drop-off when they're away from home. This Dayton squad has been very much based around their three-point shooting. Their shooting is collective north of 39.5% from distance, with having Dayron Holmes be just incredibly efficient. He and Nate Santos have been able to combine for about 14 rebounds per contest. Both these guys shooting the high 30s from 3-point range. And then on top of that, you've got Kobe Elvis in the building, who's able to give you about 8 to 9 points per contest. He shoots the ball from 3. Now, they do score about 14 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, but that's been a little bit more towards the interior with regards to the Dayton team, as Dayton, they shoot about 40.9% from 3-point range at home, 36.7% in a road/neutral venue, and they do go up against a George Mason team that has had a relatively rough go of it guarding the 3-point line. George Mason 238th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and they go up against a Dayton team that has been hovering right around 100 throughout much of the season with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but where Dayton is winning the battle is by being able to lock it down from 3-point range. They're allowing opponents to shoot just 30.6% in a road/neutral venue. That is a top 40 mark in all of college basketball, going up against a George Mason team that they are going to be able to have a little bit of an edge down low with Keyshawn Hall doing a nice job being able to supply the team with about 9 or so rebounds. He chips in there 15 points. I love what you're able to get out of Amari Kelly, someone that stands north of 6'5". He's able to shoot nearly 40% from 3-point range. He's been able to contribute about 12, 13 points per contest for a George Mason team that has been solid at being able to take care of the ball. 11.7 turnovers per game. Doesn't compare to Dayton, though. Dayton, they're turning the ball over more like 10 times per contest. Dayton doesn't quite have the same rebound rate as George Mason. George Mason, number 39 in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Dayton more around 162nd, but Dayton has been able to do a relatively solid job down low with having Holmes along with Santos, and then you're able to throw in there Javon Bennett, giving out 3.6 assists to 1.1 turnovers per game. George Mason just doesn't quite have that Ronald play. He's got an assist to turnover ratio of 2, but only more like 3 assists per contest. George Mason has also been a little bit hot and cold in terms of their defense. They have now given up 75 plus points in 2 of their last 5 games. It's been very inconsistent for them. Meanwhile, other than that clunker that they had against VCU, this Dayton team, they have been essentially a machine on offense. This team has been able to get past the 70-point plateau in 5 out of their last 6 games. So a circumstance where I'm going to be one to lay with Dayton. I did set them as a 4.5-point favorite. George Mason outside the top 275 with regards to total possessions per game, but Dayton is just that efficient that I think that they're going to get this total over. Set by total 134.5. Looking at the over, and I'm going to be one to lay with Dayton. 671, 672 on the betting board. George Washington, our nation's first president, hits a road face off against St. Joe's. St. Joe's, they hope to not be average Joe's. They're 11 to 11.5-point favorites. Your total on this game is between 157.5 to 158.5 with George Washington. I did set them as an underdog of 11.5 points. 11 is the max. I'm going to be one to lay with St. Joe's, but I'm going to be one to lay it with St. Joe's. This was a team that like 3 weeks ago, they were a top 75 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They were doing good work in guarding the 3-point arc. That has really fallen off. Now they're about 105th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but they have been much better at home rather than on the road, giving up 13.2 points fewer per 100 possessions, one at home rather than in a road/neutral venue, going up against a George Washington team that is very top heavy. You've got James Bishop, all season long, has been able to supply this team with about 17 to 17.5 points per contest, and then from there, you've been able to have Maximus Edwards be Mr. Versatile, 12.5 points, 6.5 boards, shoots 36% from 3-point range, while Garrett Johnson, Darren Buchanan, they combine for about 28.5 points per contest between the two of them, a little bit over 12 boards, while Johnson shoots 40.5% from 3. Those are the lone forward guys on the roster that average more than 6 points per contest. Now, you've been able to get some good shot blocking out of Babatunde Akingbola, who's been able to give you about 3 blocks per contest. That's the top 10 mark in all of college basketball, but with Rasheer Fleming being able to supply this St. Joe's team down low with about 7 boards per contest, I think that that's pretty massive. Now, St. Joe's, much like George Washington, they're a little bit of a top-heavy team. They've got 5 separate guys to give you at least 8.5 points per contest. From there, you got Cooper Klanzic, who only gives you about 3.9 points per contest, so big giant fall off there, but you've been able to get some good production as well out of the backcourt. Xavier Brown along with Lynn Greer are combining for about 7.2 assists per game, and them being able to control the ball is big because 7-footer Chris Idesonko, who's been a 40% 3-point shooter, he's been missing the last few games, but still have the top scorer in this game in my opinion, and Eric Reynolds doesn't average quite as many points per game as James Bishop, but gives you 16.5 points per contest, shoots 39% from 3-point range. They go up against a George Washington team that certainly is going to be willing to give up the arc on the road. At home, they allow opponents to shoot just 30% from 3. That goes up to 39.1% away from home. And if you want to look at a very demonstrative home road split. This George Washington defense that is currently allowing, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, about 16.5 points more when they leave home. I do think that allows St. Joe's to be able to control things in this game. And for George Washington, we have been seeing quite a bit of a fall off with regards to their offense as well. I do think that St. Joe's going to do a relatively solid job being able to guard the arc. Do recognize that George Washington is a top 40 team with regards to total possessions per game, but have scored now 74 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games. You've got a St. Joe's team that the defense is coming back for them. They've given up fewer than 70 in each of their last 2 games, so I did set my total 153.5. Looking at the under of St. Joe's, I'm going to be able to lay with them, set them as an 11.5 point favorite, so want to go up to 11 there. 673, 674 on the betting board. Richmond, it's a road face-off against Rhode Island. The Itsy Bitsy Spiders over Richmond do find themselves as favorites of 4.5 to 5 points. Your total on this game, and between 144 to 144.5. Semi-line at 8. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Richmond. Now, Rhode Island, a significantly better home team rather than a road team. They protect the ball better when they're at home. On the road, they're a bottom 10 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And at home, they're still bad, but they're within the top 300 at the very least. So that's a little bit of improvement. And you do have some nice backcourt pieces for this Rhode Island team. Lewis Coat-Wright has been able to provide 3.5 assists, 10 points per contest. And then Jaden Elves, 15 points. He's been able to supply the team with a 36.5% three-point shooting percentage, but this Richmond team really gets after you with regards to guarding the perimeter, and the way that you need to beat this Richmond team is down low. Richmond well outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate, despite the fact that you've got a pair of guys in Neil Quinn coupled with Isaac Bigelow, who have been able to combine for about 12 rebounds per game. Despite that, they're well outside the top 225 with regards to rebound rate, but Richmond, a top 30 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're 27th in opponent's three-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, this Rhode Island team, they are a bottom 10 team in the country with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they don't do a stellar job of being able to guard the arc. 284th in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and the king in Jordan King. He should be able to take full advantage for Richmond. He's been able to supply the team with about 18.5 points per contest. A Richmond team that, by the way, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, a top 5 team in all of college basketball and not giving the ball away. King shoots 42% from 3. I was mentioning Neil Quinn, Isaac Bigelow. These 2 guys are combined for nearly 24 points, and Bigelow has been able to shoot about 40% from 3-point range. With Richmond, they are a little bit of a top-heavy team, but even with not having a ton of depth, they really don't need it. They're well outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game. They do a nice job playing a slow and controlled brand of basketball for Rhode Island, even though you do have a little bit of a rebound advantage in terms of rebound rate. David Fuchs, with his 6.5 rebounds per game, he is the top guy on the roster, and I do think that for this Rhode Island team that has been having just so many issues with their defense, 77 plus points rendered in 3 of their last 4 games, going up against a Richmond squad that has been a relative stalwart in terms of holding up defensively, in terms of being able to slow games down. I do think that Richmond takes it to them on the road. I did set my total 142. You've seen this Richmond team give up fewer than 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games, so I'm diving in on the under. And with Richmond, made them an 8-point favorite, going to be willing to lay the number. 675, 676 on the betting board. Chattanooga is going to be playing us to Wofford. Wofford is an underdog of 7 to 7.5 points. So on this game is 145.5 with Wofford. I did set them as an underdog of 8 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the 7 to 7.5. Chattanooga took it on the chin in their last matchup against Furman, but all in all, I do like what I'm seeing on this backcourt. It's also a Dan Earl team that has been playing a little bit better on defense this season. You're never going to get like supreme defense with regards to a Dan Earl coach team, but you do have a pair of guys that are really able to light it up from 3-point range on or off, along with Trey Bonham. They've been able to combine for about 34 points per contest. Huff and Bonham combine for 3.5 steals, while Bonham has been able to shoot 44% from the outside. This is a Chattanooga team that's within the top 125 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they go up against a Wofford team that's just gotten lambasted on defense all season long, outside the top 310 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, I will say this for Wofford, they were actually a little bit more efficient on the road rather than at home. They're giving up about a half a point less per 100 possessions when they leave home, but Wofford's biggest issue has been really guarding the 3-point line. Wofford allows you to shoot from 3-point range 35.9% overall. This balloons at 36.7% when they're away from home. At Chattanooga, they certainly do allow a few open options, as well as Chattanooga, 256th in the country with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. But for Wofford, the question is, are they going to be able to take advantage of it? You've got Corey Tripp, who has been able to trip up opponents with the way that he's been able to supply about 4 rebounds, 16 points per contest, and shoots in the mid-20s, high 20s from 3-point range for a Wofford team that overall They shoot about 35% from three-point range. You've got Kyler Filewich, who's been able to do a nice job down low. He's been able to give you about 9.5 rebounds per game, but Sam Lexus, I do think is going to be able to match that. He's been solid for Chattanooga, giving you a double-figure amount of points, being able to chip in there, much like Filewich, right around 9 rebounds per contest. And though Chattanooga might not win that battle on the glass, they do have enough to be able to be relatively solid down low. And Miles Che is someone that has been able to step up for the team recently as well, giving you 7.5 points, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range, has supplied the team with at least 6 points in each of the team's last 7 games. So I feel like that ancillary piece is big for being able to take a little bit of the pressure off of the big dough in Huff and Bonham. And with Wofford, they just have not been able to guard all season long. It's a Chattanooga team that has ascended into the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And with Wofford having a little bit of an issue with regards to their offense as well, they have now scored 73 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. I do think that Chattanooga going to be able to get it done. I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a higher scoring affair as well. I do think that Wofford, after they played just some very hot and cold games last few games, they played against the Citadel, Mercer, UNC Greensboro, really the 3 slowest teams in the conference, that things are going to be cranked up, especially with Chattanooga getting past 84 in 3 of their last 4 games. So looking at the over semi total 150, I'm Chattanooga willing to lay up to 7.5 with them. 677, 678 on the betting board. St. John's is on the road facing off against Georgetown. Georgetown is a underdog of between 9.5 to 10 points with your total 151. We shall see if the pep talk that our good friend in Mr. Rick Pitino had is going to fire up the team. I did set my line at 9.5. 10 or more, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Georgetown. I am very curious to see how the team responds to everything that we saw, and I do think that people are perhaps making a little bit too much out of it, but man, that's not a good look to say the least. As for St. John's, they certainly are going to be able to win the battle down low. You've got Joel Soriano, who's giving you about 15 points, 9.5 rebounds per game, while Chris Ludlam, he's able to chip in there about 8 boards per contest. Meanwhile, on the flip side for Georgetown, really other than Supreme Cook, one of the best teams in all of college basketball, is able to give you 8+ rebounds per game. You don't have a lot there. Georgetown, about 185th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. St. John's is 41st, but what is really concerning about St. John's is that they just have not been able to play the same way on the road as they have been at home, especially on defense. They're giving up 17.4 points more per 100 possessions in a road/neutral venue rather than at home, going up against a Georgetown team that doesn't matter where they are. They're bad on defense. They're 27th in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Georgetown, they shoot in the mid-30s from three-point range. Jadon Stiles has been able to give you 13 points, shoots about 36% from the outside. Jaden Debs only shooting about 31% from distance, but has been able to supply the team with about 17 points per contest. So these guys have been able to give you buckets. And with Georgetown, it's been a case where just have not gotten a lot down low outside of Stiles and Cook. So I do think that is going to be big for a St. John's team that has done a better job of not turning the ball over, about 11.7 turnovers per contest. Dennis Jenkins gives you about 5.5 assists, 14.5 points. I think that he was not one of the guys brought up in the, shall we say, ramble of Mr. Rick Pitino, but for St. John's overall, they do shoot just 32.5% from three-point range. They're a very ordinary team there, and they go up against a Georgetown team that, if you really want to be able to bust them out, you do want to be busting them down low, and I do think that they're going to be able to do so in this circumstance. But for St. John's, they themselves, with regards to their drop-off in three-point shooting defense away from home, it's 29.1% that they allow opponents to shoot from 3 at home compared to 36.7% in a roadside-shoot-score venue. It's going to allow Georgetown to be able to hold in there. You've got a St. John's team that's relatively mid-tempo right now, which is why I did set my total more around a 149.5. I do think that we went a little bit too far with the 151, and I do think that for Georgetown, they're starting to get a little bit more of the Ed Cooley style for Georgetown. It's been rough for them on offense, 72 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games, but the defense has looked a little bit better recently. Meanwhile, for St. John's, been a case where this offense has been all over the place as well. So I'm going to be looking at the under, set my total 149, and here at 10+, going to be willing to take the points with Georgetown, set them as a 9.5 point dog, 679, 680 on the betting board. It is Alabama playing against Florida. Florida is an underdog of 8 to 8.5 points. Your total on this game between 174 to 174.5. Now, I set a high total as well of a 172.5. I just can't get there on this total. I've got to take it under. Like, to put it into perspective, a 90 to 84 game actually wins you the under if you take 174.5. And for Alabama, they certainly do have guys that are able to just put the ball in the basket. They're number 1 in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, as Mark Sears has been your main man. 20.5 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, shoots 45% from 3 in Alabama as a whole. They do shoot about 38.5% from the outside. The big key for Florida is being able to hunker down there, because Florida's going to have the advantage down low. They're a top 25 team with regards to rebound rate, but Florida this season has allowed opponents to shoot 37.3% from three-point range in a roadside shoot-score venue. And I will say for Alabama, They are a team that is well outside the top 75 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but gives up 17.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a neutral court venue. And at home, opponents are shooting just 28% from three-point range against them. Now, the reason why Florida has been able to get to 80 on the regular themselves has not been necessarily because of their explosive outside shooting. Walter Clayton has been able to give you about 16.5 points per contest. Zion Pullen, he's pulling in buckets, 5 assists, 15.5 points per game. And Pullen shoots 40% from three, but other than these two guys, out of your top 7 scorers, you really don't have anyone else that shoots above 33% from three-point range. Will Richard, Riley Kugel, they've been inconsistent from the outside, but what has really been the bread and butter of Florida is being able to man up down low. Alex Condon, Micah Hangalatten, these two guys combined for about 14 points, 14 boards per contest, while Tyree Samuel is able to give you about 13 points, 8 rebounds per game, and I do think that that's a big reason why Florida is going to be able to keep this game rather, shall we say, snug. I did set my line at 8.5, so if you're able to get one of the 8s, I'm going to be one to lay that, but for Florida, I do think that it is a very big key that they're able to do a good job on the glass against an Alabama defense that, it's been certainly leaking oil all season long, but if we want to go to the extreme, they have now given up 76 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 5 games, so they've been a little bit better on that front. And for Florida, they are a bunch that they don't necessarily knock down a whole bunch of shots, but they're able to give you a whole heck of a lot of rebounding, and I do think that that could cause for a little bit more of a slog in this game. As a matter of fact, for Florida in regulation, they have not had the total reach north of 170 in any out of their last 5 games. So I do think that we've went a little bit too far here. I did set my total 172.5. I'm looking at the under with Alabama. I'm willing to lay up to 8, not a half a point more with them. 681, 682 on the betting board. It is Oklahoma State and the Road face-off against Cincinnati. Yes, we are on to Cincinnati, and they're on to being a favorite of 10 points. So on this game between 139 and 139.5. With Oklahoma State, I did set them as an underdog of 10.5 points. So 10 is the absolute max I'm willing to lay with Cincinnati, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. Cincinnati is a top 25 team in terms of their rebound rate, and I do think that that's where they're going to be able to win this game. You've been able to have a lot of production out of Victor Lakeen being able to supply the team with about 10 points, 6 boards, a block per contest, very versatile player. Now, for Cincinnati, this is not necessarily the world's greatest shooting team. They shoot about 32.5% from 3, 68.5% at the free throw line, but this Oklahoma State defense is not what it once was. For Oklahoma State, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are clocking in well outside the top 125, and for Oklahoma State, they do see quite a bit of a drop-off with regards to their offense as well. The defense is not too bad, honestly, when they hit the road. They're only giving up about 4.4 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than when they are at home, and you always get consistent production of Javon Small. Has been able to come up big with about 14 points, 4 boards, 4.5 assists per game, but for Oklahoma State, they are scoring about 16.9 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than when they are at home, and now they have to face off against a Cincinnati team that is Aziz Bandago down low, who's been able to give you about 8.5 boards, a block per contest, while Brandon Garrison and his 5.5 rebounds per game. That leads the way for Oklahoma State. Now, despite the fact that Oklahoma State doesn't have that guy like a Moussa Cisse from last season, they've honestly been okay on the glass. I'm going to stop short of saying amazing or anything like that, but for Oklahoma State, in terms of the rebound rate, they are a top 125 team in all of college basketball when they're away from home. They've actually got a better rebound rate away from home rather than at home, but you've got on the flip side a Cincinnati team that's just absolutely bearing down there. Dan Skillings has been able to give you about 12.5 points per contest, and the guy that's going to be very key in the backcourt is Tay Thomas, who's been able to give you 10.5 points, 3 assists. It's a Cincinnati team that does a relatively solid job not turning the ball over too much with about 12 turnovers per contest, and for Oklahoma State, they have been very much stuck in terms of their offense. Last 3 road games, they have scored 63 points or fewer in every one of them. I do think that Cincinnati going to be able to bring the defensive intensity while they themselves might be lacking a little bit of something in offense. As a result, I did set my total at a 138.5. You're at the 139.5 to have an under. And with Cincinnati, one to lay up to 10, not a half a point more with them. 683, 684 on the betting board. Jacksonville State is going to be playing us Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee State, an underdog of 5.5 to 6.5 points. Total on this game, you're going to be getting it at 130.5. And with Middle Tennessee, I did set them as an underdog of 6 points. I personally would rather lay a 5.5 rather than take a 6.5, as the opener on this game was 5, and I did find some value with the opener personally, so willing to lay it here. With Jacksonville State, this bunch has been very solid with their defense, a top 80 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and despite not having a single guy that gives you north of 6 rebounds per game, and Juwan Purdue is that guy that gives you 6 rebounds per game, this team is in the top 75 with regards to rebound rate. They've got one dominant scorer in Kai Tandy, who's been able to supply 18 points, a steal per game, shooting 38% from 3 for a Jacksonville State team that on offense is well outside the top 200 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They turn the ball over 13.5 times per contest. They shoot the ball just 32% from three-point range. Those are still a little better numbers than Middle Tennessee, who's been relying upon the backcourt of Jevin Porter along with Elias King, who have been able to give you about 27 points per game to really elevate their offense and to be able to get them points. This team turns the ball over 15 times per contest. They shoot 41% overall from the floor, and it's just been a mess for the team down low as well. Jared Coleman-Jones actually pops threes at about a 40% clip. He's able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game, but past that, you really don't have a lot down low for Middle Tennessee. They haven't been a terrible team on defense. They're within the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but a bottom 40 offense just can't offset everything that has been going wrong for them. And for Middle Tennessee, when they do hit the road, they do allow opponents to shoot 36.7% from three-point range. Meanwhile, the Jacksonville St team, they've been transformed when they've been at home. For Jacksonville St, they allow opponents to shoot just 32% from three-point range at home. So it is a total that is set at a 126. I do think that Middle Tennessee, a team that's going to be well outside the top 250 when it's all said and done in terms of total possessions per game, just how will crank it up enough to be able to get this total over. And with Jacksonville St, want to lay up to 5.5 with them. 685, 686 on the betting board. It is Clemson in the road face-off against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is an underdog of 6.5 to 7 points at home. Total on this game across the board is 147. I did make Clemson a favorite of 7 points. So 6.5 is the max I'm going to be willing to lay, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Georgia Tech. They went on the road already this season and did knock off Clemson, and the biggest thing that Georgia Tech is going to be able to do in this game is guard the three-point line. Georgia Tech, in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, they're 32nd in all of college basketball, and I really like what I've seen out of Nathan George. He's had at least 4 assists in all but one of the team's games ever since the turn of the calendar to 2024, but this is a Georgia Tech offense that does get to be quite inconsistent. They're okay at taking care of the ball. They're not great. They're not terrible, but you just need to have a little bit more consistency out of some of these guys from the outside. Like Miles Kelly, he has been able to supply the team with about 14.5 points, 6 boards, but he shoots about 30% from three-point range. Kawasi Reeves, out of your top 4 scorers, only guy that shoots north of 30.6% from distance at about 38%, and that's a prime way to be able to take down this Clemson team. Clemson, in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, that mark is about 224th in the country, with opponents shooting 34.5% from 3 against them. And for Clemson, they should be able to do a solid job down low. You got Baye Ondongo down low for Georgia Tech. He's been able to do a solid job with about 8.5 rebounds, 13 points per game. But for Georgia Tech, even though this team does generate a lot of second chances, they give you a lot of second chances as well. That's why they're 126th in the country with regards to rebound rate. Meanwhile, Clemson, they are 46th in the country. While we give P.J. Hall all the love, and rightfully so, he's been able to supply 19.5 points per contest. He's been able to give you about 7 boards. He throws in there a block and a half per game and shoots about 31.5% per 3. It's Ian Shefflin, who's been able to give you 9.5 points, 9.5 boards, do a nice job down low. And then we got a pair of guys that are able to combine for 6 assists in Joe Girard, Chase Hunter, with Girard being your main bomber from three-point range at about 43.5%. And with Georgia Tech, there's just not a team that's going to go out there and is going to generate a lot of turnovers. So that's going to allow for a lot of clean possessions for Clemson. And you really did see this the first time around, even though it was a game that very much was all over the place due to the fact that it went to double overtime, 93-90 in regulation. That was a game where both teams were able to get to 70. I do think that we're going to see that be elevated a little bit more in this spot. I don't think that we're going to see Clemson go 3 of 21 from distance and 41.5% from the floor overall, much like they did the first time around. Clemson won the rebound battle in the first game. I do think that they're going to do a better job this time around. I do think that Clemson is going to be able to get revenge. I did set my line at 7, so wanted to lay up to 6.5 with Clemson, and did set my total at 147. I do think that this is going to be snug enough for some late game following. Neither of these teams super duper up tempo, but I do think that Clemson going to be able to turn it around with their 3-point shooting. So going to be looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 6.5 with Clemson. 687, 688 on the betting board. It is Louisville. They play us in Notre Dame. Notre Dame is an underdog of 1.5. Totals between 134.5 to 135.5. Made my total 131.5. Looking at the under, Notre Dame in their last 15 games has allowed 71 points or fewer in regulation in all but one of them. They have been absolutely supreme on that front. Meanwhile, they go up against a Louisville team that has been highly dysfunctional with their offense. One night they'll give you 90, the next night they'll give you 60. You just don't know what to expect out of them. As for Louisville, in their last 4 games, they have scored 92, 79, 77, and 59 points. Meanwhile, the defense has been a constant for how bad they have been. It's a Louisville team. They've given up 86 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games, but I don't think that Notre Dame is going to be continuing that on. This Notre Dame team, while I talk about how tremendous this defense has been in regulation because they played a game that went to overtime against Georgia Tech. They've broken the 70-point plateau in regulation once this calendar year. They've got Marcus Burton, who among power conference players is leading the country in turnovers, 3.8 turnovers. He does, though, give you about 16 points, 4 assists per game, and then Brendan Shrewsbury, J.R. Korzinski, they've been able to combine for about 18 points per game. Now, I will say this, if you've got trepidation with this under, it's probably because both of these teams have their top flight guys shooting the ball at the free throw line. Notre Dame, each of their top 3 guys do shoot north of 80.5% of the free throw line. For Louisville, each of their top 3 scorers do shoot north of 76% at the charity stripe as well. And the best rebounder in this game is going to belong to Louisville, Brendan Huntley-Hatfield, 12.5 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. But despite that, you've got a lot of guys like a Tay Davis when it comes to Notre Dame. They're able to give you like 5 to 6 rebounds per game. There's much more balance with regards to Notre Dame hitting the glass. That's a big reason why Notre Dame currently they're clocking in with regards to rebound rate right around about 86th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, Louisville, they're more around about 150th. And for Louisville, this team doesn't really see too much of a bump with regards to their defense when they're at home. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, so the Louisville team is about 320th in the country. They're giving up about 7.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home. But this Notre Dame team, they've been able to travel very well with their defense. They're outside the top 300 with regards to total possessions per game. And Notre Dame, they're about 76th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. You got Mikey James, who's been able to shoot in the high 30s from 3-point range, applying this Louisville team with about 13.5 points per contest. But Louisville as a whole, they shoot just 30.7% from 3. I think Notre Dame is going to be able to get this game stuck in the mud. I do think that they're going to get their slow grinder style, and that allows Notre Dame to be able to pull off the win. I said Notre Dame as 1.5 point favorite. I like them outright on the money line and made my total 131.5. So also looking at this total under 689, 690 on the betting board. Duke, it's the road to face off against Miami, and this is a DK Network right to pick. Miami does find themselves as a underdog in this spot at home of 5 to 5.5 points. Total on this game is between 150 and 150.5. My write-up is going to be on the over. I did set my total at a 156. You got a Duke bunch that has been highly efficient with their offense, 14th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, you've got a Miami team that, while they are 81st in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, it's been a little bit of a rough stretch for them recently. They're just a little bit of a different team when they are at home. They are scoring 12.8 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a neutral court venue, and that's a big reason why I'm going to be willing to take Miami with the points as well. I did set them as a 4-point underdog. You got a Duke team that is going to be able to match what they're going to be able to get in no Chad Omier. Omier for Miami, he has been highly tremendous down low. He's able to give you about 9.8 boards, 17.5 points per game, but Kyle Filipowski, 17 points, 8.5 boards. Both of these guys shoot it quite well from 3-point range, and with Duke, they do a nice job of doing the little things. They're 21st in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on the road. They do shoot about 73.5% the free throw line. Not like the world's greatest rate, but you know what? That's a top 135-ish rate in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, you've had Jared McCain along with Jeremy Roach both be able to shoot north of 41.5% from 3-point range. Roach especially shooting 44.8% from distance. He's been rock solid. While Tyrese Proctor, he's more of your conductor, 3.5 assists, more like 1.3 turnovers per game. Meanwhile, with Miami, you've got each of your top 6 scorers shooting at least 35% from 3-point range. You've been able to get quite a bit out of Wooga Poplar all season long with about 14 points, 4 boards. He shoots 42.5% from distance. And even Ochad Omier has been able to shoot 37% from 3-point range. Nigel Pack has served as the main ball handler with about 3.5 assists per contest, but Bentley Joseph is also able to give you those 3.5 assists per game as well. And you need a little bit more consistency out of him, but Keyshawn George, he's been able to step up from time to time this season as well. In the last 4 games, he has scored 16, 0, 13, and 0 points. So, yeah, it's certainly been all over the place. I know that he was dealing with a little bit of an injury. Him being back in the fold and him being close to 100%, I do think he's going to be very impactful for a Miami team that is a little bit up-tempo, but they're not like overly up-tempo, but they do at home play at a rate of about 3.9 possessions per game more than they do on a roadside neutral court environment. Duke is about 210th in the country with regards to total possessions per game, but that overall efficiency, I do think is going to win out in the spot. I did set Duke as a 4-point favorite, so going to be able to take the 5 with Miami, and I do think that this is going to be nip and tuck enough for a late game felling, which will also up on this total as my write-up that is on this total over 691, 692 on the betting board. It is Furman. They hit the road to face off against Samford. Samford does find themselves as a favorite of 7 points. Your total on this game is 164 to 164.5. Opener on this game was 8.5, and I agree with the opener. I set my line at 8.5, so now that we're down to 7, I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Samford. This team is just harebrained and all over the place. They're a top 25 team with regards to total possessions per game, and they're shooting at a clip of north of 40% from three-point range, a top 15 mark in all of college basketball, with having Ryland Jones tying it all together. Ryland Jones has been able to give you 5.1 assists to 1.3 turnovers per game. Not the most prolific scorer in the world, but when he needs to pop threes, he's able to do so. He's able to give you 9 points, shoots 38.5% from distance as Anchor. Anchor has been the big man down low, 15.5 points, 6 boards per game. And for Furman, they've dealt with injuries all season long. Getting back Marcus Foster has been big with 18.5 points, 7.5 boards. You can tell how different this team has been with him on the floor versus off the floor. But now you've had Alex Williams out of the fold for the last 2 games, and I expect him to be out once again, and that's a big deal. He gives you 15 points, 5 boards, shoots 40% from 3, and even if he's back for this game, he's not going to be close to 100%, which means that Foster along JP Peaks, who's giving you 5 assists, 16.5 points per game, they have to be doing all sort of players, and that leaves you with 3 guys on the roster out of your top 7 scorers that are going to be available in this game that do shoot about 31% from 3-point range, and that's the way that you need to knock off this Samford team. Samford does a lot of things well. They generate a bunch of turnovers, they play airbrain, they put up points, but Samford is going to give you some open looks from 3. At home, they allow you to shoot 36% from distance. That's a bottom 75 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, you've got a Furman team that they themselves are very vulnerable from the outside. Furman, they allow opponents to shoot from 3-point range right around about 32.5% overall, but that does balloon up to 34.2% in a roadside-shoot-square venue, with Ben Vanderbilt right now being your top rebounder with about 4.5 rebounds per game. That is a little bit of an issue, even though you've been having Jermaine Marshall deal with injury all season long for the Samford team. I do think that they're going to be able to do a relatively solid job down low against a Furman team that has a little bit of a leg up with regards to rebound rate, about 115th in college basketball for them, about 167th for Samford. But Samford has been a top 75 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis because they are so good at being able to generate turnovers. They've got 7+ different guys. They're able to generate at least a steal per game. Meanwhile, this Furman team, they are 200th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up 10.5 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home. And you've got a pair of teams that they are very much up-tempo teams. So I did set my total at 166.5, with this being a game I think is going to be about an 8 to a 9 point game. I do think that you're going to be close enough for some late game fouling, so I'm looking at the over. I would say I'm willing to lay up to 8 with them. 693, 694 on the betting board. It is Drake, and they play us at Belmont. Belmont does find themselves as 9 to 9.5 point underdogs. Tonight's game getting it at a 156.5 to a 157.5, and I did set my total at 154.5. I'm going to be diving under. While Drake has been a very good and efficient offensive team, they are a top 40 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. They're also a top 70 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against a Belmont unit that it certainly has been rough for them on defense. They're well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but the light has come on for them a little bit more, scoring right around 75+ points each of their last 3 games, and in 3 of their last 4 contests, they have now given up 70 points or fewer in every one of them. This has been a Drake unit that has been letting up a little bit more defensively recently. 72+ points surrendered in 4 of their last 5 games, but one of those games was against Indiana State. You have to go up against Bradley, and one of those games also went to overtime, so there were some extenuating circumstances there. I do think that they're going to be able to lock down a little bit more, and they're going to have the best player out there on the floor. That'd be Tucker DeVries. 6.5 boards, 20.5 points per game, shooting 36% from distance. They go up against a Belmont team that is certainly going to allow a lot of open looks from 3-point range. Belmont, they allow opponents in a roadside shoot-your-court venue to shoot 37% from 3-point range. Meanwhile, Drake, they have been a team that's been able to lock down the arc at home, allowing opponents to shoot just 30.2% from 3-point range. And for Belmont, that's their bread and butter. Belmont is in the top 40 nationally in terms of percentage of shots that do come from 3-point range. You've had Cade Tyson be very good as a 6'7", 6'8", little bit of a combo player. I believe that that's the brother of Hunter Tyson, who was at one point playing for Clemson. He's been able to supply 16.5 points, shoots 46% from 3-point range, and for that matter, for Belmont, out of your top 4 scorers, 3 of them do shoot at least 40% from 3. Lone exception is Malik Dia, who's been able to give you 17.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. And Jacoby Gillespie, he has been on the fold for a little bit for the team. He has come back and he's reacclimated himself very well. 2.5 steals, 4.5 assists. That's a big reason why we have been seeing this increased defense from Belmont, but it is a little bit of a top-heavy team as well. Keyshawn Davidson, he's able to give you about 4 assists per game, but it is a Belmont team that they do turn the ball over about 12.5 times per contest, with this Drake team being able to have the advantage down low, as Belmont is well outside the top 225 with regards to rebound rate. Drake is a top 75 team with this regard, with having Darnell Brody being able to give you about 8 rebounds per game. Aiden Wright is able to chip in their double figures, and don't forget about some of the ancillary pieces in the backcourt as well. You've got someone like a Cooper Garland. You've also been able to have Connor Enright be able to both give you about 5-6 points per contest, but you get a combined about 4.5 to 5 assists per game out of them. You've been able to have 41.5% three-point shooting out of Enright as well. I do think that's enough for Drake to be able to get the job done and to be able to cover this rather large number. I did set my line at 10.5. I'm going to lay with Drake. I do think that Drake going to be able to find their sea legs on defense. Set my total 154.5. So also looking at the under 695, 696 on the betting board. Southern Illinois plays us to Murray State. Murray State is an underdog of 3.5 to 4.5 points. Your total on this game is 135 to 136. Made my total 135.5. Personally, the opener was 136. I'd rather have a 136 under rather than a 135 over, because you do have a pair of teams that are well outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game. And Southern Illinois, they are a really good team at being able to lock down the three-point arc. They're a top 25 team in the country with this regard. They go up against the Murray State team that they do a lot of things quite well on defense. The one thing that they don't do is really guard the three. They're well outside the top 225 with this regard. And for Murray State, if you look at their overall season numbers, they're 206th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but they do give up 2.8 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, and they have been a completely transformed team ever since Missouri Valley Conference play has began, going up against a Southern Illinois team that they're giving up about 8.8 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. And for Southern Illinois, they clearly are going to have the best player out there on the floor. That would be Xavier Johnson. 23.5 points, 6 assists, 4 boards, steal and a half per contest on 38.5% three-point shooting. And it's a Southern Illinois team that, while they're not world beaters from three-point, they're pretty solid. They shoot 35% from three. You've got Trent Brown, who's able to shoot about 37% from the outside. While Southern Illinois doesn't necessarily have that one dominant big man, they do have Clarence Rupert. He was a part of that St. Peter's team that went to the Elite Eight a few seasons ago. He's been able to supply the team with about 6 rebounds per contest, and for Southern Illinois, they're about 129th in the country with regards to rebound rate. You've got a Murray State team that they themselves are sort of in the same vein, only they don't have quite the same rebound rate. Murray State, they're hovering right around about 230th with regards to their rebound rate. You've been able to have Nick Ellingson be able to supply the team with about 6 rebounds per contest, but for Murray State, it's been all about scoring in the backcourt, as you've got a trio of guys, Rob Perry, Jacoby Wood, Quincy Anderson. I'll give you between about 12.3 to 12.5 points per contest. They all supply you with between 4.2 and 5 boards per contest. Wood is your main facilitator with about 4.5 assists, shoots 40% from 3, but for Murray State, they really rely upon efficiency, 9.3 turnovers per game, but they're really not shot makers. They shoot 69% the free throw line, 32.5% from three-point range, and with the way that Murray State has been getting quite torched from three-point range. Overall for the season, Murray State is ranking right in the neighborhood about 299th with opponents' three-point shooting percentage, which actually does fall to about 34% on the road. I do think that they're going to be up against it. That's a big reason why I did set Southern Illinois as a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 4 that I'm seeing here, and did set my total 135.5, so you're at the 136. Diving under 697, 698 on the betting board. Xavier, they play as Providence. The X-Men find themselves as a favorite of 5 points with your total between 149 and 150.5. I did set my line at 4, so I'm going to be willing to take the 5 with Providence. Providence has seen a bit of a fall off ever since Bryce Hopkins has been out of the fold, but this is still a Providence team as a top 30 team nationally with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're still doing a nice job guarding the perimeter. Away from home, opponents are shooting just 31.4% from three-point range. Meanwhile, it's a Xavier defense that has been all over the place. It's been a little bit better this year than it has been a season ago, and certainly when they are at home, they're able to have much more prosperity than when they are on the road, especially with regards to the offensive front as well. With regards to the offense, Xavier, they shoot about 35.5% from three-point range at home in a roadside shoot court venue. They have that fall off to about 32.7% as Xavier is able to register about 7.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court venue. But getting back to the defense, they have been giving up about 7.2 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home rather than when they leave home. And for Xavier, it's all about having Abdul Usman be able to win the battle down low. He's been able to give the team right around 6 boards, block per contest, comes in from North Texas, and has been a pretty sure defender for this bunch. Meanwhile, you've got a Xavier team that they still are a little bit shaky with regards to their three-point shooting, but you've been able to have Quincy Oliveri, Desmond Claude be able to supply the team with about 35 points per contest. all vary from three-point range, is shooting about 44.5% from three. And Davion McKnight, he's not quite what we've seen out of some of the Xavier guards in the past, but he's pretty versatile. 5 assists, 12 points, 4 boards, shooting 39% from three-point range, but it's a little bit of a top-heavy team. You've been able to get about 5 boards per contest out of Jaitis Nemasika, but that's that. With this Providence team, I do think that they're going to be able to do a solid job of holding up because they've got Devin Carter, who has been absolutely tremendous ever since the absence of Hopkins began. 8 boards, 19 points, 3.5 assists, shooting 40% from three-point range. It is a Providence team that they do turn the ball over about 12.5 times per contest, but they go up against a Xavier team that is not doing an amazing job of being able to generate turnovers, and it's not like the Xavier team has been some sort of a amazing rebound rate team. They're about 85th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, this is a Providence bunch that has been more around about 160th with having Hopkins out of the fold. That's made it tough, but you do have Joshua Duru, who gives you 7 boards, 17 points per game. His three-point shooting, it has fallen off a little bit, but he's still maintaining about 32.5% from distance, and they get to go up against a Xavier team that certainly has been having their issues guarding the arc all season long, about 33% from distance. That's 130th in all of college basketball. I do think that Providence, with their defense, finds a way to be able to hold in this game. I do think that this is going to be a game that's going to be a little bit more bogged down with regards to the scoring. So I did set my total at 148. Here at the 149, 150. Going to be looking at the under, and I'm going to take 5 here with Providence. 699, 700 on the betting board. Missouri State plays us Bradley. The Braves of Bradley are between 2.5 and 3-point favorites. Your total on this game is between 142 and 143. I did set Bradley as a road favorite of 4.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Bradley. I've been highly impressed with the way that they've been taking much better care of the ball. There was a point earlier in the season in which Bradley was turning the ball over north of 12.5 times per contest. I know that they were dealing with a few injuries out there in the backcourt, which were really bogging them down. But now that they've got their full allotment of guys out there, it's been tremendous. And coupled with that, you've got the versatility of Malevi Leons. Leons has been able to supply the team with about 7 boards, 14 points, shoots 37.5% from three-point range, and he's going to be matched up with NJ Benson, who down low for Missouri State has been solid. 8 points, 7.5 rebounds per game, and then you've got Donovan Clay, who does stand right around about 6'8" himself. He's able to supply in a wide variety of ways. 6 boards, 13 points, 2.5 assists, shoots about 34% from the outside. But for Missouri State, the calling card for the team has been defense the last few seasons, and they have not fallen outside the top 100 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Missouri State, a big reason why is that they're now allowing opponents to shoot about 34.5% from three-point range in a roadside shoot court venue. For Missouri State, we have seen quite a bit of a fall for this team when they have been away from home, as in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. When they're away from home, they are giving up about 8 points more than they are at home. And for Bradley, they certainly do get a nice bump when they are at home. This Bradley team overall, in terms of points allowed per possession, they're clocking in right around about 102nd, but that does fall off by about 5.5 points per 100 possessions when they are at home. Meanwhile, you've got also a Missouri State team that has been just having a few too many turnovers themselves, about 12 per contest. Matthew Lee has turned the ball over about 3 times per game. Now, it does give you 4 assists, but also only shoots about 27% from three-point range. Also, Mason with his 18 points per game has to do a little bit of everything. Meanwhile, Connor Hickman along Duke Dean, they are very much in tandem in the backcourt. You've got Hickman, who's been able to give you about 14 points, 3 assists, shoots 40% from 3. Dean shoots about 37.5% from distance with 4 assists, 13.5 points per game. And Bradley has just become very dominant in so many different aspects. The defense has fallen off a little bit. They've given up 73 plus in 4 out of their last 5 games, but they're going up against a Missouri State team that has been having a little bit of an issue being able to put the ball in the basket themselves. 72 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. And if you want to expand it a little bit more to regulation and regulation only, because they, towards the back half of January, played a pair of games that either went to double overtime or single overtime. They have scored 72 points or fewer in now 7 out of their last 10 games. So I do think that things are going to be a little bit more buttoned up in this aspect. I do think that Missouri State is going to look to get back to their defensive forte. Did set my total 140.5. Diving in on the under, but with Bradley, I'm going to be willing to lay up to 4 points with them. They're a team that they don't see too much of a fall with their defense when they're away from home. So going to be looking at the under and going to be willing to lay it with the Braves of Bradley. 701, 702 on the betting board. Indiana State, they hit the road. They're facing off against Valparaiso. Valparaiso finds themselves as 16-16.5 point home underdogs. So the game is saying between 156.5 and 157. I did feel like we were going to see a little bit of a fall off with Indiana State after they had just gone off to such a hot start to the season, and we have seen that. They've now scored 75 points or fewer in 4 of the last 5 games. Now, needs to be pointed out, the one exception along the way was when they put up 101 points earlier in the month against Valparaiso. Valparaiso in that one allowed Indiana State to go 9-24 from 3, so it's not even like they went into flamethrower mode. It was really what Indiana State was able to do inside in that game. As Indiana State, they went 29 out of 38 on their 2-point shots. They went 16 of 20 at the free throw line, and Robbie Avila, he had 27 points, 8 boards, and he's one of the most versatile players in all of college basketball. Avila is able to give you 16.5 points, 7.5 boards, shoots 40% from 3, and what I think is so interesting about Indiana State is that while they are a top 25 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, it's taken a little bit of a fall off here recently, but they still have been pretty rock solid. They don't necessarily suffer too much of a drop off when they're away from home. They're scoring about 7.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home, so they're still relatively quality there. And for Indiana State, they shoot 36.9% from 3-point range at home. That actually balloons up to 38.7% in a roadside court venue. But I do think that Valparaiso gives you a little bit more of a spirited effort here. Valparaiso's been getting gashed down low. They're outside the top 275 with regards to the rebound rate. You've got Cooper Schweiger along with Jackson Edwards, who are combining for about 10.5 rebounds per game. Jerome Palm just turned out to be a big giant flopperoonie for the team after he was pretty solid down low to begin the season. But of your top 4 scores for Valparaiso, 3 of them, they do shoot at least 35.7% from 3-point range. Schweiger with his 12.5 points per contest is one of them, and I do like their point guard in Darius Xavier. He's able to give you about 9 points, 5.5 assists, fewer than 2.5 turnovers per game. Now Valparaiso, in terms of their offensive efficiency, does not compare to Indiana State. They're about 241st in the country with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. In terms of raw points scored on a per possession basis, they're well outside the top 300 with that regard, but they are scoring about 5.5 points more per 100 possessions when they're at home. And the big key for Valparaiso, just try to limit things from 3-point range, much like they did the first time around. Even though they got bludgeoned the first time around, their 3-point shooting defense, it wasn't terrible. Valparaiso overall for the season, they're 21st in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and they do go up against an Indiana State team that, while we always talk about the offense, defense is in the top 130 with regards to points allowed per possession, though. They do allow opponents to shoot 34.5% from 3-point range when they're away from home. So, very interesting circumstance here. I think that Indiana State gets another convincing win, but I do think that we've went a little bit too far. I set my line at 15, so here at 16. Going to be willing to take the points for Valparaiso. I just don't know if they do their part with the total as well. Set my number at a 155 for the total, so looking under and looking at the points with Valpo. 703, 704 on the betting board. UAB is going to be playing us a Rice. We give our delay and Kiffin go Elves as Rice is an 11.5 point underdog. Your total on this game between 148 and 148.5 with Rice. I did set them as an underdog of 10 points. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Max Fiedler has been so good and so versatile for this Rice team. He's standing 6'11". He's able to supply the team with about 9 points, 8.5 boards, and nearly 5 assists per contest, going up against a UAB team that has been pretty bad with regards to their defense. They're outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. At home, opponents shoot north of 35% from 3 against them. Now, you're going up against a Rice team that has been far from amazing with regards to their defense. Rice is well outside the top 230 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and for Rice, 309th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Rice is playing a little bit slower with regards to their tempo than they did a season ago, but still a top 130 team with regards to their overall possessions per game. But I do think that they're going to be able to hold in there because UAB is not really a great 3-point shooting team this season. They lose Jolly Walker from the season ago, so it's been the whole is greater than some of its parts approach with regards to this offense. You've got 5 separate guys that give you at least 9.5 points per contest. Nobody that gives you north of 13.1 points per contest, as Yaxel Lenberg has been that top guy. 13 points, 10 boards. He's able to chip in there 2 blocks and does shoot 39.5% from 3-point range, but all in all for UAB, they only shoot about 30.5% from 3-point range. You've got Eric Gaines, who's only been able to shoot about 24% from distance as the main facilitator with about 5 assists per game. UAB has actually been finding a lot of points through second chances. They're a top 55 team with regards to offensive rebound rate. Meanwhile, I do think that Travis Evie, Makai Mason, they're going to continue to wake up a little bit more. They're shooting about 33% from 3 with 30 points between the two of them. What they really need is guys like Anthony Selden, Elam Husanovic to be able to pick it up. And Husanovic is now shooting about 42.5% from 3 over the last 3 games. He's been able to put up a combined 37 points. That's been encouraging. So I do think the Rice going to be able to get just enough offense to be able to hold in there against a UAB team that is still relatively laser, still playing relatively quickly. And for Rice, this defense, it has still been relatively bad. They have given up 76 plus points in 3 of their last 4 games. You've got a UAB team that has been able to get to at least 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games, with lone exception being a 69-point performance against an SMU team that's a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So just up my total 150, looking at the over of the Rice. Won't take anything north of 10 with them. 705, 706 on the betting board. South Florida, they're facing off against UT San Antonio. Meet for the Roadrunners, who find themselves themselves as 5.5-point underdogs. Your total on this game are between 155.5 and 156.5. With the Roadrunners, I am going to be unwilling to back them. I did set South Florida as an 8-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. South Florida has really kicked it up with their defense. This is pretty much Kennesaw State 2.0 with the way that Abdul Rahim comes over from Kennesaw State. Brought with him pretty much his 3 of his top 4 scores from a season ago. But for South Florida, this team is in the top 80 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've done a really nice job guarding the arc. They're in the top 50 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And for UTSA, the problem for this team is not scoring. They've actually been quite good in terms of being able to get to 75 on the regular. You've got Jordan Ivy Curry, who's one of the best scorers that you've never heard of. He's been able to supply the team with about 17 to 18 points per contest, shoots in the high 30s from 3-point range. And then on top of that, you've got a 7-footer in Carlton Lingard who's able to shoot from 3-point range. He's able to give you about 6 boards, double-figure amount of points. But this UTSA bunch, they're just absolutely ghastly in terms of their defense. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis for UTSA, currently they are 353rd in all of college basketball. And South Florida has actually been one of your top 100 teams in all of college basketball this year as well. They got off to a really rough start with regards to their 3-point shooting, but if you look ever since early December, that game against Florida State, that was really the turning point for them. They've been able to shoot darn near 40% from 3-point range ever since then, and I do think that they're going to be able to carve up this UTSA defense with that regard, as you've got Chris Youngblood along Celton Miguel. These two guys, they've been able to combine for about 29.8 points per contest. You've got both of these guys now shooting north of 42% from 3-point range. One thing that is really lacking for South Florida is their rebounding. They're outside the top 175 with regards to rebound rate. Kashawn Pryor is really the lone guy that gives you north of 5.5 rebounds per game. And UTSA, not a bad rebounding team. They're about 163rd in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. You've also been able to get Christian Tucker to get things going. 11.5 points, 5 assists. Very good facilitator for the team. But that said, this UTSA team, they're really up against it against a South Florida bunch that they've just absolutely manned up on defense. They had a little bit of a harebrained game against Florida Atlantic over the weekend, but prior to that, for South Florida, they had given up 72 points or fewer in each out of their previous 9 games. And for South Florida, the last time they matched up against UTSA, they held them to 72 points, which against UTSA, that's pretty darn solid. UTSA went about 10 of 29 from 3-point range, and I do think that South Florida can certainly duplicate that. In that game, South Florida also shot 18 of 33 from distance. This UTSA defense is bad. I don't know if it's quite that bad, so I do expect a little bit of a fall off in the scoring in this one. As a result, I did set my total at 156. This is a circumstance where seeing this at right around about a 156.5, I'm seeing a few 156s out there at a 156.5. I'm going to be taking a look at this total under, and with South Florida, I do think that their defense wins out in this one. I think that this is a bit of a rough matchup for UTSA, so going to be willing to lay with South Florida, made them an 8-point favorite at 156.5 for higher, diving under. 7-7, 7-8 on the main board. UIC, Illinois, Chicago, they're going to be playing against Evansville. Evansville is an underdog of 2.5 points. Your total on this game is between 143.5 and 144. For Illinois, Chicago, I did set them as a 3.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this small number now. For Evansville, they have been a completely transformed team ever since Ben Humor-Riches came back to the fold. Humor-Riches, top scorer for the bunch. He's been able to give you 14-plus points per contest, shooting north of 40% from 3. He was out for darn near a month due to injury. Ever since he's come back, this team has really been able to go, I would say, 5-3 in their last 8 games. It's been much better for this Evansville team, but now they are riding a little bit of a rough 3-game losing streak. And the big thing for this Evansville team has been the defense. They've now given up 70-plus points in each of their last 4 games, and that's where UIC excels. Now, UIC have had some scatterbrained results, and they are giving up nearly 7 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shooting court venue, but they're a top 30 team in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, going up against an Evansville team that is well outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate, and Evansville very much does rely upon the 3. They shoot about 35.1% from distance, while you've got Humor-Riches shooting north of 42% from 3. Chuck Bailey, he's also been a nice sharpshooter for the team. 9 points on 38.5% 3-point shooting, but you just don't have a lot down low for Evansville. Other than Usan Toomey, who's been able to give you 6.5 boards, 11.5 points per game. There's nothing there. Nobody else gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. And UIC, they themselves are well outside the top 175 with regards to rebound rate, but I like the versatility of Toby Okani. He's able to give you 10.5 points, 7 boards, a little bit over his steal, 2 blocks, and then you've got your top 4 scorers for this UIC team. 3 of them being able to shoot north of 40% from 3. CJ Jones, your main facilitator with 4.5 assists per game. He gives you 11.5 points, shoots 40.5% from 3. Isaiah Rivera bombs it at about 40.5% from 3 with his 14 points per game, and Phillips Chbosky, he's been able to shoot about 42.5% from 3 as well. So I do think that an Evansville team that has had a tough time all season long giving it up from 3-point range, they're going to have a difficult time once again. This Evansville team is well outside the top 225 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. That balloons up to 37.4% away from home. So I do think that while UIC does a solid job of being able to guard the 3-point arc in this one, they also are able to carve up Evansville from 3-point range, allowing them to be able to get the job done. I did set my line at 3.5. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 3. Neither of these seem super up-tempo, and I do think that Evansville going to be quite contained with regards to their offense. So I told 139.5, diving under, and willing to lay it with UIC. 709, 710 on the betting board. Illinois State, they play us in Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa is a favorite of 1.5 to 2 points. The Dolphins game is 132.5 to 133. I did set Northern Iowa as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number for Illinois State. This has been a top 175 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but Illinois State has absolutely no home court whatsoever. Out there in Normal, Illinois, it's pretty normal for them. They're actually giving up 2 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court venue, and they just can't shoot. Illinois State is in the bottom 25 in terms of their 3-point shooting. You've got Miles Foster down low, so able to give you about 7.5 boards, 12 points per contest. This Illinois State is about a top 150 team with regards to rebound rate. Northern Iowa leaving a little bit of something to be desired on the front of having a main rebounder, but they themselves have been able to do a solid job by collective of being able to hit the glass. But this team is shooting 29% from 3-point range. You don't have anyone out of your top 5 scorers that is shooting above 32% from 3-point range. Jarius Burford has been able to give you 13 points per game, but he's not really a guy that's going to give you too much in terms of facilitation. You've been able to have Dalton Banks be able to give you about 3.5 assists per game, but this Illinois State team is quite brittle in the backcourt. And for Northern Iowa, while Bowenborn can be a little bit of a roll of the dice in terms of the way that he shoots 32% from 3, gives you 13 points per contest. He's a little bit of a chucker. You know that Nathan Izey is going to be able to impact the game in so many different ways. 2.5 assists, 6 boards, 14 points on 37.5% 3-point shooting. And for Northern Iowa, they do shoot about 35% from 3-point range. Northern Iowa has had their warts all season long in terms of being able to guard the arc. That is very much going to be masked by the fact that Illinois State has not been able to do a good job all season long of being able to launch from 3-point range. Northern Iowa, as a matter of fact, 267th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but Northern Iowa has been a very good team in terms of not allowing a lot of second chances. And for Northern Iowa, this has been an offense that has been a little bit hot and cold with the way that Bowenborn does shoot, but they don't turn the ball over a lot, and they're actually better on the road than they are at home. They're averaging a full point more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot court environment rather than when they are at home. And for Illinois State being 257th with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, I do think the Northern Iowa is going to be able to take hold in this one. I do think that there's a possibility that you do see a little bit of late game fouling in this one. And for Illinois State, to their credit, they do score about 11.5 points more per 100 possessions when they are at home. So set my total a little bit higher at a 136.5. I'm going to be looking at the over. Both Northern Iowa made them a 2.5 point favorite, so willing to lay up to a deuce with them. 7-11, 7-12 on the betting board. Charlotte, they third face off against Memphis. Memphis is a 5.5 to a 6 point favorite with your total at 145. I did set my total at 142. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. Now, Memphis has been getting carved up on defense all season long. They are outside the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they do face off against the Charlotte team that has been supreme in the way that they've been able to guard the 3-point line. Charlotte, 28th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. That said, when it comes to Charlotte, I do think that they're going to have a little bit of difficulty matching up with the sheer size of Memphis along that top scorer in Davy Jones, who's able to give you about 21 points, throws in there about 6 rebounds per game as well. So I did set my line at a 6. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Memphis, and I know what I'm getting myself into. Memphis, they have only covered 2 spreads at home thus far this season, and it just feels like Penny Hardaway is just not cutting it as a coach, but I do think that this honestly is the spot for them. They go up against the big man in Igor Milicic, who's been able to do a nice job for Charlotte, 13 points, 8 boards, but for the Charlotte team, it's not like there's some sort of amazing 3-point shooting team. You had Lucille Patterson be able to give you about 15 points, 2.5 assists per game, but team shoots about 32% from 3-point range. They do get to the free throw line often, and they do shoot about 75.5% at the charity stripe, and let's call it what it is, the Charlotte team. They're a little bit more disciplined, but I like the game with Javon Quinterly. Quinterly has been able to give this Memphis team 5 assists, shoots 35.5% from 3 with 13 points per contest. Javon Quinterly and Davie Jones have been tremendous for Memphis. It's all about what are you going to be able to get out of Nequan Tomlin along with Malcolm Dandridge, who combined for about 10 rebounds per contest. Having Caleb Mills hurt, that has been hurting them in the backcourt as Jaden Hardaway. He has just not been able to develop all season long for Memphis, so they do shoot about 35.5% from 3, and for Memphis, they've been able to generate quite a few turnovers. Out of their top 4 scorers, 3 of them do give you at least 1.2 steals per game. Charlotte has been able to do a pretty solid job of being able to hold on to the ball, but I do think that the added size of Memphis is going to be able to take hold. Recognize that Memphis is well outside the top 125 with regards to rebound rate, but I do think that Charlotte going to get their slow, grimy style, but I do think that Memphis is going to induce a lot of sort of dead ball turnovers in this one to be able to allow you to cash it under, and I do think that for Memphis, they're going to be able to take it to a Charlotte team I just don't think matches up the world's greatest with them, and for the Charlotte bunch, they have now given up 70-plus points in 3 of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Memphis squad that it's been touch and go for them really over the last few weeks. In general, you just don't know what you're going to be able to get out of this team, and I do think that after they gave up 109 against SMU, they're going to show a little bit more pride on the defensive side of things. So, going to be looking at the under semi-total 142, and with Memphis willing to lay up to 5.5 with them. 7-13, 7-14 on the betting board. Nebraska as the road face-off against Indiana. This is a pick'em game with your total between 147 and 147.5. I did set Indiana as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take Indiana on this pick'em line. With Indiana, it's been rough for them all season long. The backcourt play has not been great. Xavier Johnson has been banged up all season long, and when he's been out there, he has been far from amazing at being able to take care of the ball. Meanwhile, you've got on the flip side a Nebraska team that you've got Casey Shomanaga, who just chucks it in there, being able to give you 14 points, shoots about 37.5% from 3, but he doesn't do anything other than shoot. He doesn't give you any rebounding. He doesn't give you any facilitation, so that does put Nebraska behind the 8 ball a little bit. I like Rink Mass. Overall game is versatile, 13.5 points, 8 boards, 3 assists. That's going to bode well, having to defend a pair of guys that have versatility of their own. Malik Renew along with Khalil Ware. They're combining for about 30.5 points, 15.5 boards, and for Ware, he's been able to shoot 43.5% for 3. It's an Indiana team as well outside the top 100 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, outside the top 125 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but you can tell that Nebraska has been feeding off that home crowd of Lincoln all season long. As for Nebraska, they're about 74th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they do give up 14.4 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, and for Nebraska, this team has had a little bit of a kryptonite in terms of guarding the three-point arc all season long. Nebraska, in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, is 124th in all of college basketball, but that balloons to about 34.9% when they are away from home. And for Indiana, this team has been rough both at home and on the road, but I do think that with them being in their friendly confines, allowing opponents to shoot more like 34% from 3 at home compared to 34.5% away from home. And Bryce Williams being a little bit hot and cold for the Nebraska team as well, giving you about 12 points per contest. It's just enough for Indiana to find a way to be able to get the job done, and Trey Galloway has done a nice job not turning the ball over. So this is a circumstance where I did set Indiana as 1.5 point favorite. I do think that they get the job done at home, and did set my total at a 147.5. You've got a pair of relatively mid-tempo teams. It's been a pair of teams that have had their struggles on defense, and I do think that this could be still good enough for late game fouling and or an overtime. So going to be looking at the 147 over, and I'm going to be willing to take Indiana on this pick'em line. 7-15, 7-16 on the betting board. Vanderbilt plays those to Georgia. Uga is between a 1 to a 2 point favorite. Heck, I'm seeing them as a 1 point underdog at circa total on this game is 144. I'm not sure why Georgia isn't a pretty mid-sized favorite here. I set them as a 6 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. Vanderbilt has been awful in nearly every facet of basketball. I wish I could put it any other way, as Romagnon has been able to do a nice job holding on to the ball. He doesn't turn the ball over a lot. He gives you 10 plus points per contest, but Vanderbilt is shooting less than 30% from three-point range. Vanderbilt is well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They don't induce turnovers. They give up a lot of shots from three-point range. Like, it is just all bad for Vanderbilt. And for Vanderbilt, they do have a very unique and distinct home court. It hasn't done them any good. They're only giving up 5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot-to-court venue. They don't shoot it well from three-point range. Chazos Camateros, he shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, but They just have not been able to get any consistency with Colin Smith, one of their main low post presence, being out for pretty much the entirety of the season. Vanderbilt, they're in the bottom 75 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, you've got a Georgia team that you've got Noah Thomason, who's been able to be quite versatile for this team. He's able to give you about 12.5 points per contest. He and Jabri Abdul-Rahim both give you relatively similar splits there. And then you've got RJ Melendez, who I will admit, I just don't know what he does well. He does everything like, okay, he gives you like 9 points, 5 boards. He's just sort of there for this Georgia team, but I do think that even with that, Georgia has more than enough firepower to be able to get it done. They've got Justin Ellis now, but able to give them about 3.5 assists per contest, and this Vanderbilt team, they were able to have a triumph in their last home game against Texas A&M, but just take a look at the way that this defense is getting gashed time and time again. Since that game against Missouri, who has been absolutely awful this year, this bunch has now given up at least 73 points in 6 out of their last 7 games. Meanwhile, you got a Georgia unit that they have lost 6 straight games, but that said, they've been competitive in these games. They lose by 3 to Arkansas. They lose by 6 against Florida. They are able to keep it within 10 against South Carolina. They're able to keep it within 10 against Alabama. They've been there. Meanwhile, Vanderbilt has been getting bludgeoned. I just think that Georgia's a better team here. I set my line at 6. I'm going to be willing to lay with them. Set my total 142. This Vanderbilt team has not been able to score all season long, and Georgia's a relatively mid-tempo team. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Georgia. 7-17, 7-18 on the betting board. Wichita State, they play out at Tulsa. Tulsa finds themselves as underdogs of 6.5 to 7 points. Total on scheme is 146. Did set my total 150. I'm looking at the over. Tulsa has not been the same defense when they've been away from home rather than at home, and just in general in conference play. They're giving up north of 13 points more per 100 possessions than they did in non-conference play, and for Tulsa, this team is surrendering about 16.3 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. That said, I did set my line at 6. Here at 6.5 to 7, I'm going to be willing to take the points because while I do think that Wichita State is going to be taking advantage of the rough defense that they've got, this Wichita State team still is not great from three-point range. They shoot about 31.5% from 3 and 69% at the free throw line. Will turn the ball over 12.5 times per contest. I like the game of Kobe Rogers, 15.5 points, steal per contest, shoots 38% from three-point range, but he is the only out of your top 6 scorers that shoots above 32.1% from three-point range. Now, Wichita State going to be able to win the battle down low. Tulsa outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. Wichita State, they're within the top 125 with Kenny Poto, Quincy Ballard, Dallin Ringendahl combining for about 18.5 rebounds per game, and Hardall Beverly has been able to give you about 5 boards, 3 assists per game, but I do think that Tulsa going to remain lively in this game because they have been able to have PJ Haggerty be a solid 20-point per game scorer. Doesn't shoot it well from three-point range. This Tulsa team as a collective, they only shoot about 33% from the outside, but they do induce steals. They're able to get about 8 steals per contest. This is a top 75 team in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, which without a doubt does take a little bit of a pitfall when they're away from home, but they do go up against a Wichita State team that they themselves have been very fascinating with the way that they have been playing defense. They're about 148th in the nation. Meanwhile, for Tulsa, they allow you to shoot about 28% from three-point range at home, north of 38% in a roadside-court venue, so buyer beware there. But with Tulsa, the offense, it has been able to travel a little bit better than the defense, which is not really saying a whole heck of a lot, but that said, I do think that Tulsa is able to find a way to be able to bust through a Wichita State team that they've been a little bit vulnerable with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. It's a Wichita State team that has not been able to generate a lot of turnovers, and with Tulsa turning the ball over about 13.5 times per contest, that should be able to help them out quite a bit in the spot. And it's a Tulsa team that they've just been giving up points upon points all season long, going up against a Wichita State team that they have been up and down with regards to their offense, to say the least, having scored 63, 84, 82, 55, and 61 points in their last 5 games. I do think that you're going to have a good old-fashioned shootout in this one. First time these two teams played, Tulsa won that game 79-68 in that game. For Wichita State, they just did not have it. They went 6 of 21 from three-point range. I do think that improves here, so looking at the overset by total 150, and at north of 6, going to be one take the points with Tulsa. 719, 720 on the betting board. It is DePaul. They hit the road. They're facing off against Marquette. Marquette is a 25.5 to a 26-point favorite, and your total on this game, it is 150.5. With Marquette, I did set them as a 26.5-point favorite. It sounds ridiculous, but I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This DePaul team is just all sorts of awful. They're in the bottom 40 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They're a bottom 75 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate. They're outside the top 250 with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage. Really, the only thing that they aren't bottom 100 in all of college basketball is the fact that they shoot about 71% of the free throw line. That's about the only good thing I'm able to say about this team. Their lead scorer in Chico Carter, good news, he did return in their previous game against Providence. Did not look like himself, though, at 8 points, 2 boards, did not sink a single three. So he's still trying to work his way back. You don't have a single guy on the roster that gives you north of 4 rebounds per game. For Carter, he's the only guy that gives you north of 2.4 assists per game. I will say Jalen Terry's been able to shoot 44% from 3-point range, but it's rough for this DePaul team. And the last time these two teams hooked up, DePaul, they just got flattened by a count of 86-73. That was actually a cover for DePaul, despite the fact that they lost at home by 13 points. And honestly, the final score was a little bit closer than what it was. Marquette had a 15-plus point lead throughout much of that game, and in the first half, I believe that they had gotten up by nearly 20. And for DePaul in that game, they had to shoot 11 of 24 from 3-point range to maintain, and they go up against a Marquette unit that is a top 20 team in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Now for Marquette, they themselves only shoot about 34% from 3. We should see a little bit of a drop in the way that they're able to pop it from 3-point range, but they also are much better 3-point shooting defense at home, allowing opponents to shoot 32.3% from 3-point range at home, 35.5% in a roadside shoot score venue. And Tyler Kolek, he's going to be by far the best player in this game. Kolek has been able to supply the team with 15.5 points, 7 assists, 5 boards. Other than Oso Ogudero, you don't have a ton down low for Marquette in terms of rebounding. 7.3 rebounds, a little bit over a block per contest. So Marquette is outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate, but even with that, they should completely dominate this game. David Joplin has been able to shoot 40% from 3. Kolek is up to shooting 40% from distance. Marquette also does a great job taking care of the ball, only about 10.5 turnovers per game. I think that we're going to see DePaul really take it on the chin in this one, and with them probably not shooting nearly 50% from 3 like they did the first time around, this is going to get ugly. I did set my line at 26.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Marquette. I did set my total at a 150.5. I'm seeing a few straight 150s out there. This DePaul team, they have just been bleeding points upon points, so a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to take a look at the 150 over. And with DePaul, I needed at least 27 points to take a shot here, so going to be willing to lay it with Marquette. 721, 722 on the betting board. LSU plays us to Kentucky. Kentucky is a road favorite of 7 points, and your total on this game is anywhere between 163 and saw 165 on the open. Mostly seeing 164 now, and I'm going to be willing to take a look at the over. With Kentucky, we saw a very nice spirited effort from them on defense against Auburn. I think we're going to see a lot of that revert to what it was before, and truth be told, Auburn was just having a really rough shooting night a few nights ago against Kentucky. A Kentucky team that they're still a top 10 team with regards to 3-point shooting percentage at 40.5%. And for Kentucky, even when the 3-point shot is not falling, this is still a top 15 team in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. For Kentucky, this team has been generating about 11.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, but they go up against an LSU team that is only about 119th in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, but for LSU, they've been able to give you 10.2 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot score venue, but they do have to compete with a Kentucky team that their top 5 scorers, all of them except for Antonio Reeves, give you north of 3 assists per contest, and DJ Wagner has dealt with injuries all season long. Looks like we're seeing the best form of him. Meanwhile, you've got Reed Shepard still shooting north of 50% from 3, 12 points per contest. Robert Dillingham, Antonio Reeves, these two guys combined for about 34.5 points per contest, and both are shooting at least 43.5% from 3-point range, and they go up against an LSU team that has had a tough time on the glass. They are a top 125 team with regards to rebound rate, but other than Will Baker is able to give you 5+ boards per contest, so you don't necessarily have a ton there, but I do think that they're going to hold in there against a Kentucky team that I was just expecting a lot more out of Ahmad Bradshaw. It feels like John Calipari has no idea how to utilize him, and for LSU, while they are 175th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, that goes down to 31.6% at home. That is well north of 36% in a roadside shoot score venue, and this LSU team is just so much better when they're at home rather than on the road with regards to their defense. They're giving up 12.2 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home rather than in a roadside shoot score venue. And for Kentucky, while they did have that spirited performance against Auburn, they're still 134th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, they're actually giving up fewer points per possession when they leave home. I do think that that's a split that's going to iron out, but for LSU, having Jarius Cook back at full, giving you about 3 assists, 15.5 points per game, that has given this offense just a lot more, shall we say, stability. LSU, they shoot about 36% from 3, and Jordan Wright has been Mr. Wright. 15 points, 5 boards, 2.5 assists. He has really ascended over the last month or so. I think that LSU is able to stay lively in this game. It's an LSU team that has been able to creep up with regards to their offense, scoring 30-plus points in 3 out of their last 5 games. They're coming off of a nice road win against South Carolina where it was a little bit of a lower scoring slog, but for Kentucky, I do think that they're going to get back to hitting Mach Turbo with regards to their offense as well, and even though last 2 games have been underwhelming for them, they've still gotten to at least 75 points in 4 of their last 5 games, so I expect a high-scoring shootout, set my total 165.5, looking at the over, anything north of 4, will take those points with LSU. 723, 724 on the betting board. Ole Miss hits the road face-off against Mississippi State. Mississippi State is a favorite of between 7.5 to 8 points. Total on this game is 142 to 142.5. I said Ole Miss as an underdog of 5 points. So now that we're getting to 7.5, seeing some 8s out there, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Ole Miss. This has been a bunch has really been relying upon the 3 ball, and I was expecting a lot more with regards to rebound rate. They're outside the top 125 with regards to rebound rate, despite having Jamarian Sharp, along with Moussa Cisse, Giants of the Earth. These 2 guys, they've been able to do a solid job combining for about 4 blocks per contest, but hasn't really translated in terms of rebounds. Meanwhile, they go up against a Mississippi State team that, even though they're not quite the same defense as they were a season ago, they're still 29th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and this Ole Miss bunch, they are about 149th in the nation with this regard, but I do think that they're going to be able to muscle up a little bit against a Mississippi State team that, while they're a better shooting team than they were a season ago, still leaves it a little bit of something to be desired. Josh Hubbard, he's been able to do a nice job being able to supply this team with about 15 points, shoots 35% from 3, and Shaquille Moore has been able to shoot 38.5% from 3 as well, but a lot of this is just relying upon low post presence to be able to hit the glass. You've got Charles Matthews, Tolu Smith combining for about 15.5 rebounds per game. Jimmy Bell Jr. continues to give you about 6 boards per contest. DJ Jeffries, when he's been out there, he's dealt with a little bit of an ailment. He's been able to hit the glass as well. But for Ole Miss, you've got really good just overall shooting on this team. Among their players that have given you at least 1 point per contest this season, all but one of them shoot at least 37% from 3 that have made at least a 3. So that takes like Jamarian Sharp out of the fold, and that lone exception is Alex Flanagan, who's been able to give you about 7 boards, 15.5 points per game. Matthew Morrell is giving you about 17 points per game. He, from 3-point range, has been able to shoot 40.9% from 3, and unlike a lot of these teams that they shoot it well from 3, but they turn the ball over a ton, Ole Miss is only turning the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. Now, they're overall about 85th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis because they don't necessarily have a ton of offensive presence on the inside, but still, this is a bunch that they shoot about 38.5% from 3-point range, and it's a bunch that with their 3-point shooting, it travels very well, shooting 39.8% from distance away from home. They go up against a Mississippi State team that's done a good job of being able to take away the arc, which is why I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a lower scoring slog. I said my total 139. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. If you look at the last time these 2 teams played, Mississippi State took it on the chin when they went to Ole Miss. That was an 86-84 expose in which Ole Miss shot 12 of 30 from 3-point range. I do think that diminishes, but I do think that Ole Miss wins that turnover battle. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Ole Miss, and I'm looking at this total under 725, 726 on the betting board. New Mexico plays us Colorado State. Colorado State, a 5.5 to a 6-point underdog with your total between 155 and 155.5. I just set New Mexico as a 5-point favorite. Here at the 6, I'm going to be willing to take the points now. Last we saw Colorado State on the road on a weekday. They scored 11 points in the second half against San Diego State. I don't think we're going to see a replay of that. And for this New Mexico team, they're really good on the glass. They're a top 40 team with regards to the rebound rate. You've got 2 guys, Nelly Jr. Joseph, JT Toppin. They've done an amazing job being able to supply you with north of 15 rebounds per contest. You've got good versatility with regards to this entire New Mexico team that just doesn't turn it over. Top 10 team in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They're a top 50 team with regards to total possessions per game, only turning it over 10.5 times per contest, and they do generate 9.5 steals per game, but this is a New Mexico team that they gamble a little bit too much for turnovers, and they face off against one of the most widely guards in all of college basketball, Isaiah Stevens, 16 points, 7.5 assists, and 2.2 turnovers per game. Colorado State only turns the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. In Colorado State, they don't focus on trying to generate as many turnovers as New Mexico. And I will say for New Mexico, even when they don't generate a turnover, this is still a rock-solid defense. They're still a top 40 team with regards to points allowed on a per-possession basis. And for New Mexico, at home, opponents are shooting 25.5% from 3-point range against them. I know that they're amazing with their defense. That is an outlier. That is a number that's going to be creeping northward. And for Colorado State, they've actually done a better job with their 3-point shooting defense away from home. At home, opponents are shooting 35% from distance against them. In a road or neutral court venue, that actually drops to about 32.3%. And Colorado State, just overall with their defense, it's been pretty much the same on the road as they have been at home. They're only giving up about 1.9 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. Now you've got a trio of guys on the New Mexico side that have been able to do a solid job with their offense. Cheval Mashburn Jr., doesn't give you a lot in terms of like facilitation, rebounding, what have you, but he's just a scorer. He's been able to give the team about 14.5 points per contest, and then Jaden Ellis, Donovan Dent, they combine for about 31.5 points, 9.5 assists, fewer than 4 turnovers per game, and both guys shoot about 36.5% from three-point range, but I do think that with Colorado State having on their side Isaiah Stevens, having now Nikwe Clifford, along with the D2 transfer and Joel Scott, being able to combine for about 25 points, being able to give you a little bit of something down low, while guys like Patrick Cartier shoot it well from three. I think Colorado State going to be able to hold in there in a game where I do think that there's going to be a lot of scoring involved, with both of these teams being ones that are quite efficient on the offensive end. I did set my total 157. I'm looking at the over. And with Colorado State, made them a 5-point underdog, so we'll take the 6 with Colorado State to go along with that over. 727, 728 on the betting board. It is Pepperdine, and their third face-off against Pacific. Pacific is a home underdog of 6 of 6.5 points, totals between 148.5 and 149, and with Pacific, I did set them as a home underdog of 4.5 points. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Pacific. Pepperdine is allowing opponents to shoot north of 45% from three-point range against them. That is by far the worst three-point shooting percentage defense on the road in all of college basketball. Now, Pepperdine is able to put it up themselves. Got a pair of guys, Houston Mallett, Michael Ajay, they've been able to combine for just under 33 points per contest. Both of these guys shoot north of 40% from three-point range. Ajay, he's been able to do a solid job being able to chip in there nearly a steal per contest, as well as Javon Porter coming back, helps the team out down low, 15 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, and for Pacific, you really don't have anyone that's able to elevate this team. You've been able to get right around about 10 points per contest and a low 33-point shooting percentage out of Judson Martindale, but I mean, it has been very rough for the team all season long, but you have had Donovan Williams be able to ascend, give you about 4.5 boards, 9.5 points per game, and the question becomes, can Pacific take advantage of this bad Pepperdine three-point shooting defense? Because for Pacific, they only shoot about 31.5% from distance, but you do have Mo Odom, who's been able to give you 4.8 assists to less than 2 turnovers per game. Pacific, about 11.9 turnovers per game. Now, I'm not saying that it's amazing, but it could be worse, and they do face off against a Pepperdine unit that they're only about 244th in the country with regards to rebound rate. Now, Pacific is 362nd out of 362nd. When you can be worse than Mississippi Valley State in any facet of basketball, that's just absolutely impressive. But for Pacific, I do think that they're going to do just enough around the perimeter to be able to hold in this game. For Pacific, they certainly are going to give up some threes themselves, as Pacific 278th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but that goes down to about 32.8% at home. We've seen Pacific give some spirited efforts at home. We recall them being able to lead at the half against Gonzaga. You've been able to get some relatively okay production, as well as Lucille Holmes, who's been able to give you about 7 points per contest. He's emerged a little bit in the backcourt recently, and with Pepperdine, just the way that they give up points upon points away from home, I do think that that's going to allow a Pacific team that has now been able to get past 73 points in 3 of their last 5 games to be able to hold in there. This is a circumstance where I set my line at 4.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points in. I did set my total 146.5 with Pepperdine. They are a team as well outside the top 250 with regards to total possessions per game, and both of these teams do have their turnover woes, so going to be looking at the under and the points with Pacific. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra game, 729, 730. UNLV has the road face off against Air Force. Air Force is a underdog of 6 to 6.5 points, goes between 133 and 134. Last we saw Air Force against UNLV, they won by 32 on the road. I will go out here on a limb and say that they don't win by 32 in this game, but that said, I do like the points here with Air Force. It does have a little bit of a feel of a bad matchup, and for UNLV, you look at the raw numbers and they're honestly not good. UNLV is outside the top 175 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate, so it's almost rhymeless and reasonless that UNLV has knocked off Creighton by double figures, the fact that they've had the triumphs that they have, and the fact that they're actually above 500. But you do have Jadrian Thomas, who's a freshman who's been able to give you 12.5 points, 6 assists per contest, shoots 39% for 3. Now, if you take a look at this Air Force team, they're actually allowing more points per possession when they're at home rather than on the road. It's been very intriguing to take a look at it for this Air Force team. They've been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to bomb from three-point range, though they also do score about 2.2 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/score venue. But each of your top 5 scorers do shoot at least 37% from three-point range. Raitis Petreitis, last time he played against UNLV, had a triple-double. He's been able to give you 4 assists, 6 boards, 15.5 points per game, while generating 2 steals per game as well. And then you've got a pair of guys in Evan Taylor, along with Jeffrey Mills, steals. They've been able to do a nice job combining for about 24.5 points per contest, 6 assists, 2.8 steals, and both shoot 37% from three-point range, while Bo Becker, he gives you double figures. He shoots 41% from three as well. Now, Air Force does not have a lot on the glass. Other than Kellen Boylan, he gives you about 5.5 rebounds per game. Nobody else really gives you north of 5 boards per contest. But for UNLV, even though you got the Boone brothers in there, they're more rim protectors rather than guys that really just pound the glass. They've been able to give you about 2.5 blocks per contest. It's a UNLV team that is good at taking care of the ball with about 10.5 turnovers per game, but they only shoot about 33% from three-point range. And UNLV, when they're away from them, they certainly do have a little bit of issue with regards to giving up points. UNLV actually a little bit of a better three-point shooting defense away from them rather than at home, but they really do allow you to be able to knife inside, to be able to get quite a few buckets. This UNLV team, they are now about 108th in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, actually scoring more points per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than on the road, while their defense continues to be outside the top 200. So it is a circumstance where I am going to be one to take the points with Air Force. And with this total, I did set it at a 134. Recognize that Air Force is a little bit of a slow and controlled team, but it just feels like a little bit of a bad matchup for a UNLV team that has not been stellar on defense all season long. So looking at the over, and we'll take the points with Air Force. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-501, 306-502. Army is going to be playing us Lehigh. Lehigh is a 2 to 2.5 point favorite on the road. Total on this game is anywhere between 130.5 and 131. And with Army, I did set them as a underdog of 1.5 points. So here at the 2+, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Army. This team has been wretched with their offense. Well outside the top 300 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, but this Army team has actually been able to do a nice job on defense. They are 33rd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Lehigh is well outside the top 225 with that regard, and for this Lehigh team, it has been really tough for them defensively all season long. About 172nd in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Army, meanwhile, is 65th. Army, very interestingly, by the way, giving up pretty much a same amount of points per possession at home rather than in a roadside short venue. But Ryan Scovins, he's been able to supply this Army team with about 12 points per contest. Charlie Peterson, great name, he's been able to give you about 5 to 6 rebounds per game. And this is a Lehigh team as well outside the top 225 with regards to their rebound rate. Other than Tom Parolin, who's been able to give you 5.5 rebounds per game, you don't have anyone else that gives you north of 4.4 boards per contest. Tyler Whitney Sidney has been your main man with about 14.5 points, 2.5 assists. He only shoots about 29% from three-point range, though, and you've got your number 2 scorer in Keith Higgins trying to reacclimate from injury. He's been back for the last 3 or so games. He's been able to put up a combined 23 points in the last 3 contests, and overall for the season, after 13.5 points per game, he's been a little bit of a shell of himself. So as he's trying to acclimate his way back, I do think that's a good opportunity for our Army to really put the clamps down on defense. And Army has now won 4 straight games in regulation because the game against Navy went to overtime. They have allowed fewer than 60 points in regulation in every one of them. And last time these two teams played, Army was able to get the job done on the road by a count of 68 to 57 on a day where Lehigh shot 4 of 25 from 3. I do think that is going to be improving just a little bit, but I do think that the Army defense is going to be able to keep them lively in another slog. I said by total 129.5, diving under, and with Army willing to take the 2.5 to 2 points with them, though. I'm not going to take them on the money line. Just going to stick with the points here. 306-503, 306-504. Winthrop is playing against Presbyterian. Presbyterian, a 9 to a 9.5 point underdog. Your total on this game between 145 and 146. And with Presbyterian, made them an 11-point underdog. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Winthrop. Winthrop has been a top 25 team in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And though this Winthrop team doesn't necessarily have that one guy that's going to absolutely dominate things down low, you've only got Colton Telford, who's been able to give you 5+ rebounds per game with 5 boards per contest. They do a much better job by collective of being able to rebound than Presbyterian. Presbyterian 269th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Winthrop more like 221st. You saw it for Winthrop, Alex Timmerman, the Bucknell transfer, being able to give you about 4.5 boards. He's able to give you a little bit in terms of interior defense. And for Winthrop, they do shoot about 35% from three-point range, with KJ Doucette having good versatility, 13 points, about 4.5 boards, shoots 39% from the outside. And with this Presbyterian team, well, you've got a team on the flip side in Winthrop that does a good job of being able to guard the arc. Presbyterian, they are 276th in all of college basketball in this regard, though I will say they allow opponents to shoot just 34.2% from distance away from home, closer to 37% at home. And you do have for Presbyterian one big bomber in Sabaje Teal, who's been able to give you about 12.5 points on 43.5% three-point shooting, but he's the only on their top 5 scorers that shoots above 33.7% from the outside. You've had a very good season with about 4.5 boards, 15 points per contest out of Marquise Barnett. He's been able to give you about 2 steals per contest as well. And for Presbyterian, to their credit, they do a better job of taking care of the ball than Winthrop with about 11.3 turnovers per contest, but Winthrop, even though they're not necessarily a super disruptive defense, that perimeter defense has allowed them to become a top 165 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up about 11.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment. And for Presbyterian, they actually give up 3.2 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they're at home, but still 298th with regards to defensive efficiency. That's a big issue. I did set my total at 145, so you're at the 146, diving under. And with Winthrop, made them an 11-point favorite, so going to be one lay the number. 306-505, 306-506. Holy Cross is going to be playing as Bucknell. Bucknell is a 3.5 point favorite. Your total on this game, it is 134 with Bucknell. I set them as a 4-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. John Griffin, the former bracket busting Bison, great. He's been able to get the team rolling as you've got the best 2 players out there on the floor, in my opinion, on the side of Bucknell. Down low, you've got a 7-footer, Noah Williamson, who's able to give you 6 boards, 12.5 points, and he's able to pop threes while giving you a block per contest. Meanwhile, Jack Forrest, 5.5 boards, 16.5 points, shoots 38.5% from 3-point range, while Elvin Edmonds hasn't shot it well from 3, but he has been able to give the team double figures and about 4.5 assists per game as well. Meanwhile, with Holy Cross, they're outside the top 250 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, and they just have Joe Active doing a little bit too much. 14 points, 6 boards, shoots about 28.5% from 3-point range, and you do have a guy in Joe Nugent who's able to shoot about 42% from distance at 6'6". He supplies the team with 7 points per contest. Problem is, he's been out of the fold the last few games, probably not going to be playing in this game as well, though you do get Bo Montgomery back to the fold. He's been able to give the team a little bit more facilitation with nearly 3 assists per game, but with Nugent out of the fold, that means that you really don't have anyone on the roster that gives you north of 4.5 points per contest that shoots above 35% from 3-point range. And the way that you really want to take down this Bucknell team is from the outside. This Bucknell bunch, they do allow a lot of open threes. They're about 168th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, though with Bucknell, they've been much better in terms of guarding the arc away from home. About 31.8% is what opponents shoot away from home from 3-point range. Meanwhile, 36.2% at home. Meanwhile, Holy Cross, they have been allowing you to shoot it from the arc all season long. 360th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. I do think the Bucknell going to exploit this, but with Holy Cross, deal with a lot of injuries in the backcourt, with Holy Cross being well outside the top 275 with regards to total possessions per game, and Bucknell being a relatively slow and controlled team as well. I do think that you're going to get a little bit of a lower scoring slog. This Holy Cross team has scored fewer than 60 points in each of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Bucknell team that, in regulation, they have now given up 67 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. So I did set my total 132, diving in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 3.5 with Bucknell. 306-507, 306-508. USC Upstate, they play us at Charleston Southern. Charleston Southern is an underdog of 5.5 to 6 points. Your total on this game between 139.5 and 140.5. With Charleston Southern, I did set them as an underdog of 6 points. So here at the 5.5, I'm going to be willing to lay with Upstate. Upstate has been a bottom 30 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but got a Charleston Southern team that they've had their warts with regards to their defense as well. Charleston Southern, honestly, not the world's worst 3-point shooting defense, as they do allow opponents to shoot from 3-point range right in that neighborhood, about 34.5% per distance. They're actually a better 3-point shooting defense away from home rather than at home. But you've got a USC Upstate team that has Trey Borno, who's been able to give you about 14 points per contest. He does a nice job giving out a few assists per game, and then you've been able to get about 6.5 rebounds per game out of Mir Langlis. Both of these teams, they're pretty rough on the glass, so Tajay Kelly on the side of Charleston Southern, he's been able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game. He's the best rebounder in this game. Despite that, though, the Charleston Southern team, they're about 286th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. Meanwhile, you've got a USC Upstate team that they're clocking in right around about 356th in all of college basketball in this regard, but they're a much better rebound rate team at home rather than in a roadside shoot court venue. And for this Charleston Southern team, they just do have their struggles when they do leave home in terms of their offense. Overall for the season, 331st in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, so they need the offense to be able to kick it up. Meanwhile, for Charleston Southern, they just can't bury those shots when they're away from home. Charleston Southern, overall, with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, they're a respectable team at about 268th in the country, but they only shoot about 32.1% in a roadside shoot record environment. You've been able to have R.J. Johnson be able to supply the team with about 15.5 points per contest. He shoots 40% from three, and on all your top four scorers for Charleston Southern, they do shoot at least 33% from 3 points, but then you have a big giant drop-off from there. You've got R.J. Duarte, who down low has been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, and you've got a USC upstate team that all of a sudden they've been able to play a little bit better in terms of their offense and the way that they've been able to produce on that side of things. This bunch has been able to get to at least 69 points in 3 out of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, it has been a USC upstate team that has won 3 out of their last 5 games, going up against the Charleston Southern team that is now giving up 77 plus in 3 out of their last 4 games. I do think that the Charleston Southern defense, especially the interior defense, going to be the bane of them in this one. Did set upstate as a 6-point favorite, so going to be one to lay the 5.5, and did set my total 142 with the way that Charleston Southern and USC upstate have been 2 of the worst defenses in the country. I'm going to be looking at the over and looking to lay it with upstate. 306-509, 306-510. Longwood plays out to UNC Asheville. Asheville is a favorite of a 1.5, and your total on this game, you're going to be finding it at a 148, seeing a 1 out there as well, but I'm going to be looking at Longwood outright on the money line. I did set them as a 2-point favorite. Longwood has seen a little bit of a drop in defensive production recently, but this is still a Longwood team that is going to be quite stout down low, and for Longwood, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're 77th in all of college basketball, going up against a UNC Asheville team that has been very good in terms of their perimeter defense. UNC Asheville, a top 75 team with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but they're 228th in terms of points allowed per possession. They're giving up 9 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, and they have to go up against a Longwood team that's a top 75 team with regards to rebound rate. Now, you've got one really good rebounder for Asheville. That'd be Drew Pember. He does it all. 21 points, 8 boards, 3.5 assists, shoots 36% from 3 with 2 blocks per contest, but other than Nate McMillan, who's able to give you about 6 boards per contest, nobody else gives you north of 3.6 rebounds per game. Now, you do have Fletcher Abey, who's able to shoot 42% from 3, and Josh Banks shoots about 40% from distance. These 2 guys combine for about 23.5 points per game, but I do think that Longwood is going to do a relatively solid job of, for 1, being able to win that battle down low, and 2, being able to control things from 3-point range. They allow opponents to shoot about 33.4% from distance, so Asheville has a little bit of a leg up there, but it's not like this Longwood team is going out there and popping a bunch of threes, as their main point guard in Waylon Napper only shoots 19% from 3-point range. He gives you about 14.5 points per contest. On all, Longwood only shoots about 32.5% from distance, but they rely upon second and third chances to be able to generate those points. You have Michael Christmas, Jonathan Massey, along with Simon Zapala, who have done a tremendous job on the glass with a combined about 19 or so rebounds per game. They all give you at least 5.7 boards per contest. You've got a Longwood team that has been relatively solid at being able to generate quite a few turnovers as well. That's been a UNC Asheville sort of woe for them, and for UNC Asheville, they have been able to do a much better job of being able to take care of the ball this season, as you've had Caleb Burgess be able to give you about 5 assists per contest. He only gives you about 2.5 turnovers per game as well. But for UNC Asheville, despite the fact that they do a tremendous job of being able to lock things down from 3-point range, they need to guard inside the arc against this Longwood team, and I do think that Longwood is going to have a massive edge there. For the Lancers of Longwood, in terms of their opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, that's about 201st off college basketball, falls to about 47.5% at home. Meanwhile, it's 53.5% away from home. Meanwhile, for UNC Asheville, this team is 232nd in all of college basketball, allowing opponents away from home to shoot about 54% from inside the arc. I do think that with someone like Massey being able to do a nice job popping it down low, I do think that Longwood going to be able to pull out this game outright on the money line. I did set Longwood as a 2-point favorite, so going to be looking there, and it did set my total at a 144 with a Longwood team that is a relatively mid-tempo team that hangs their hat on defense. Looking at the under, and I'm looking at Longwood on the money line, 306-511, 306-512. Loyola, Maryland is going to be playing against Navy. Navy is a 1.5-point road favorite. Your total on this game is 130.5. I did set Navy as a 2-point favorite. 1.5 is the max. I'm going to be one to lay, but I'm going to be one to lay. This Navy team has been quite an interesting bunch, to say the least, is that they have been slipping a little bit with their defense. They're down to about 152nd in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but lo and behold, the one thing that Navy has been able to do is generate turnovers. They're a top 20 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they get a Loyola Maryland team that just can't hold on to the ball. 14 turnovers per game in terms of turnovers per possession, bottom 30 team in all of college basketball, and they rely upon Deion Perry to do it all. 17 points, 3 assists, steal 9 per contest, shoots 35% from 3. Now, D'Angelo Steins has been able to shoot 37% from distance. He's able to give you about 9.5 points per contest, but among healthy players, because they've been dealing with injuries to Chris Kumazeka all season long. He has not played since December. He's really the only healthy player on the roster other than Perry that's been able to shoot north of 32.5% from three-point range. You've got Golden DKU down low, has been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game, and this is a Navy team that they do rely a little bit too much on Don Draper down low. Draper has really been able to drape teams. He's able to give you multiple steals, chips in their 9 boards, nearly 10 points per contest, but it is a Navy team that I think should be able to do a relatively solid job down low against a loyal Maryland team that is about 157th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. While Navy does a great job of being able to generate turnovers, they do leave something to be desired on the glass here in 78th with that regard. But Austin Benjini giving you 16 points, 4 assists. That's rock solid for a Navy team that they only shoot about 20.5% from three-point range. But good news is they get to go up against a loyal Maryland team that they can help them get it going from three-point range. Loyal Maryland at home, allowing opponents to shoot 37.7% from three-point range, bottom 50 mark in all of college basketball without an inch, giving you a steal, 7 points per contest. I do think the Navy is going to be producing turnovers in the way that Sarah Lee's Bakery does. So I did set my total at 130. You're at 130.5, looking under. And with Navy, Southern has a 2-point favor, one to lay the 1.5 there. And we wrap things up with 3 at 6-5-13, 3 at 6-5-14. American plays against Boston U. Boston U, an underdog of 4.5 points. Total on this game is 127.5 to 128. I did set this line at 6. Now, if you've got trepidation with this one, it's because Boston U is actually a top 5 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home. But where is the offense going to come from for Boston U? You got Miles Brewer, who's been able to give you about 10 points per contest. Brewster chips in there about 3 assists per contest, shoots 39.5% from 3. But Boston U, outside the top 310 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, they get to go up against an American team as well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And American going to give you plenty of open looks from 3-point range. 326 in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. But all that Boston U does well does go to waste a little bit here because they are still 219th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And this is an American team that they do a really nice job of being able to generate some good offense. American, last season, they were really held back by the fact that they did turn the ball over about 14 times per contest. They have cut that down to more like 11 turnovers per contest because you've had Elijah Stevens be able to give you about 5 assists to 2.3 turnovers per game. Mark Rogers has been highly efficient as a big man at about 6'8", 16 points, 6.5 boards, shoots 36.5% from three-point range. And American as a whole, they shoot about 35.5% from three-point range. But that is a bunch that they've been able to do a much better job of being able to get their offense going at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment. You've been able to have George Bruce also be able to shoot about 38% from three-point range. He's been able to supply the team with about 9 points per contest. And for American, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they are scoring about 4 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment. And for Boston U, while the defense has been so good on the road, the offense it has been suffering, scoring about 12.5 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home. I do think that American is going to be able to bust through, be able to make a few threes, to be able to get this total over, and I do think that there's going to be late game fouling as well. Semi-line at 6, I'm going to be one to lay the 4.5 for the American. Semi-total 130, so also looking over, and that'll wrap things up for the Wednesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. A big thanks to Curtis Rogers of 710 Seattle Sports for joining me in the last segment. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter /X timeline at GNN_D1. Keep in mind, letters here, me does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way, that's fine an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via the 5-star review coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. And that means I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.